Chapter 13:18. The Grey Mist Lord was extremely fast. Digging the ground had always been his specialty. His claws could even break through the barriers of the spiritual space, let alone this mere soil. With the golden Buddha lotus, the Grey Mist Lord quickly retreated. He quickly dug a tunnel, and escaped to a place called Heaven's Summit in an instant. He then aimed his claws at the void of space. That strand of chaotic energy surged out from the tip of the claw, distorting space and rapidly breaking open the space barrier. Together with the golden Buddha lotus, he stepped into it. Everything had happened too suddenly, and Grey Mist Lord, who had suddenly broken into the underground cellar, had swiftly disappeared with the golden Buddha lotus. Neither Ajwa nor Death Heavenly Tao had time to react. This is the marmot Ling Zhenren dealt with. Death Heavenly Tao frowned. Senior, you don't seem to have noticed anything strange? There's no mistaking it. His appearance must have caused the restrictions on Earth to resonate, giving rise to the Heavenly Tao's signal shielding. Death Heavenly Tao didn't expect to encounter such a thing. In fact, it wasn't just him. Even Crispy Noodles Tao Monarch hadn't reacted. The avatar was also a manifestation of the Heaven's Path mystic art. He's too cunning. He actually used the restrictions left behind by the Tao ancestor. Death Heavenly Tao secretly blamed himself. And at that moment, Wang Ling appeared here. Because of the Heavenly Tao signal jamming, the aura of the groundhog quickly disappeared from Earth. In the end, Wang Ling was still one step too late. In a situation where the other party's Heaven's Path signal was blocked, it was no longer practical to use Heaven's Path techniques to track him. Even Tyrant's Buddha Golden Lotus was formed by the Heavenly Tao. Therefore, the possibility of Tyrant locating the Buddha Golden Lotus was very small. Wang Ling frowned. He had to think of another way to find her as soon as possible. Shifu, what should we do now? Ajwa was very anxious. It was his duty to protect the girl. Who would have thought that this sly groundhog would be able to find a loophole? Wang Ling's gaze was fixed on the spot where Lotus Sun had disappeared. He carefully observed the two holes that had appeared in the cellar, and poured his spiritual energy into them. His gaze quickly moved through the tunnel. However, this groundhog was very cunning. In the process of escaping, he used the power of spatial movement many times to travel back and forth. As a result, the tunnels became a maze. As far as Wang Ling could see, there was nothing. The groundhog and the golden lotus were nowhere to be found. However, it wasn't as if there were no clues. Among the many tunnels that Grey Mist Lord had dug out, Wang Ling spotted the afterimage of a Buddha golden lotus. Is it a clue left by Nuan? Wang Ling immediately understood. In the instant that the groundhog swept up the Buddha golden lotus and fled, Wang Nuan used the power of her shadow Tao to capture the shadow of the Buddha golden lotus. If he hadn't learned the shadow Tao long ago, he definitely wouldn't be so sensitive to an afterimage. Nuan had made a great contribution again. Grey Mist Lord thought that he had used the restriction left behind by the Tao ancestor to trigger the Heavenly Tao signal shielding mechanism, so that Wang Ling couldn't track him down. However, the groundhog never expected this. The power of the great Tao that he had mastered. It wasn't just the Heavenly Tao. After the space jump, the Grey Mist Lord landed on the top of the sky. However, the young girl still felt that the space they were in now was different from before. What did you do? Lotus Sun asked in the Buddha Golden Lotus. In all honesty, the aura emanating from this groundhog struck her with a sense of immense pressure. If it wasn't for the protection of the Buddha Golden Lotus, Lotus Sun felt that she might not be able to withstand this kind of oppressive aura. Your tone is neither servile nor overbearing. Aren't you afraid at all? Grey Mist Lord held the Buddha Golden Lotus in his claws and sneered. There's nothing to be afraid of. Lotus Sun said, I believe that classmate Wang Ling will come to save me. There's no way he'll find you. Grey Mist Lord sked and shook his head at the young girl. It looks like you haven't realized how serious the problem is. Then what on earth are you trying to say, senior? Lotus Sun frowned slightly and asked politely. To be honest, I did want to capture you at first and use you as a hostage. Then I would blackmail that peeping dog into submission. But the moment I caught you, I changed my mind. The groundhog sneered. You're a child of the void, right? Also, because you've been resurrected too many times, You've triggered the Tao ancestors' restriction, causing your presence to gradually disappear. That's why this monk created this golden lotus and sealed your soul inside. Hearing this, the young girl's expression froze slightly. Am I right? Grey Mist Lord chuckled. This monk's golden lotus contains the cultivation of 100 lifetimes. It can indeed be used to delay the Tao ancestors' resurrection restriction, so that your presence won't disappear for the time being. As for them, they just need to find a way to resurrect you as soon as possible and return you to your physical body. That way, the resurrection restriction won't continue to be triggered. Then what else do you know, Senior? Lotus Sun asked. I also know that the resurrection restriction was actually reactivated the moment I caught you, Grey Mist Lord said. Back then, in order to restrict my abilities, the Tao ancestor forbade me from causing trouble on Earth. As long as I'm on Earth, all the restrictions will be strengthened. Among them is the resurrection restriction. Because of my existence, this resurrection restriction has also been affected by my resonance and has become even stronger. This monk's golden lotus is no longer effective. You mean that my presence will continue to disappear, right? Lotus Sun asked. Yes, the Grey Mist Lord sighed. When your sense of existence completely disappears, everyone who knows you on this earth will forget you. As for me, as long as I carry you with me, I'll also be affected by you. And those who know me will also forget me at the same time. I understand. Senior, you're afraid of being beaten up by classmate Wang Ling. Afraid that he'll catch up to you. The young girl couldn't help laughing. Shut up. Grey Mist Lord sneered. Are you still pretending to be calm even now? You're really stubborn. As if Lotus Sun had touched its sore spot, the groundhog started to chatter endlessly about the current situation to the young girl. It wanted the young girl to see reality. When your presence completely disappears, you won't exist at all. When that happens, you'll suffer more if you live than if you were dead. Are you still delusional enough to think that that kid will come and save you? Grey Mist Lord said. And haven't you noticed? I took you with me and jumped through space. The Earth a second later? You can actually tell? That's right. This is the Earth a second later. That is to say, the space that kid is in right now is 1 second later than ours. The space is different, and your presence has completely disappeared. Even if you scream yourself hoarse, no one will come to save you. After saying that, Grey Mist Lord wanted to laugh out loud, but the more he thought about it, the more he felt that something wasn't right. That wasn't right. This girl wasn't particularly strong. How could she see through his space jump technique? At that moment, the groundhog realized its blind spot. Chapter 13:19. As Wang Ling's figure disappeared from the underground seclusion cellar, Audra suddenly felt dizzy. Oh no, why does my head suddenly hurt so much? Next to him, Death Heavenly Tao had the same reaction, and the two of them slid to the ground with their backs against each other. But the headache quickly disappeared. They sat down on the ground dejectedly. Questions kept popping up in their minds. Why were they here? What on earth were they doing? Senior Death Heavenly Tao? HM? Do you feel like we're forgetting something? I do. Death Heavenly Tao nodded. He crossed his arms as he sat cross-legged on the ground, lost in thought, but couldn't remember what on earth he had forgotten. Audra carefully observed his surroundings. Because part of his memory was missing, a lot of things couldn't be pieced together. He didn't even know why he had appeared in Battlesec's seclusion cellar. Why is there such a big hole in the ceiling? Who could have stabbed it? Such a big hole. Who would stab it for no reason? There's one in the sky and one on the ground. Didn't Ling Zhenren just leave? Maybe he did it, Death Heavenly Tao said. That's true. Audra nodded. That makes sense. My Shifu is big everywhere, so it's not strange for him to stab such a big hole. Death Heavenly Tao. What do you mean? Audra. I mean my Shifu's fists are big. Death Heavenly Tao. They fell into a long silence. After thinking it over, Audra and Death Heavenly Tao finally felt that their memories couldn't be strung together. They seemed to have forgotten something, or rather, they had forgotten someone. Let's go out and take a look. Maybe we'll remember it soon. Also, Sherfu was so anxious just now, so I think something must have happened. Let's see if we can help. Ajwa got up at that moment. He stretched out his hand and said, "Sword." Summoned, an emerald green crystal bamboo sword turned into a stream of light and fell into Ajwa's hand. The moment he grasped the sword, Ajwa felt like he had been electrocuted all over. "Prediction. What do you want to say to me?" he asked as he held up the second sword in the world. A string of words gradually appeared on the body of Prediction. "Fate will tell you, the moment you see these words, you will find your lost memories." In an instant, information instantly poured into Ajwa's mind from Forecast's body. "So that's how it is." In a flash, Ajwa understood. "What did you think of?" Death Heavenly Tao asked. He still couldn't figure it out. "I thought of something I forgot." Ajwa smiled foolishly, as happy as a child. He actually had a lot of things to do now. Therefore, he had to remind himself at all times. Using the power of prediction, Ajwa made copies of everything he needed to do on his sword spirit in case he forgot. It was Ajwa who had engraved the words that had appeared on Prophet just now. As long as he saw this string of words, he would be able to recall a specific memory. The resurrection restriction would weaken the girl's sense of existence and make everyone around her forget about her. That was right. However, the groundhog had miscalculated in the end. Sword spirit. They were not human. On the other side, 1 second later on Earth, at the top of the sky, before the palm cliff. This was the most famous tourist attraction on the summit of heaven. There was a vast ocean in front of the cliff, and one could see the horizon and the sunrise. The fracture in front of the cliff was very strange, with 5 curved, wavy fingerprints. Rumor had it that the ocean in front of the palm cliff had been created by a single palm strike from an almighty. At that moment, the Grey Mist Lord was still wondering why the girl could see through his spatial jump. "How did you know?" His gaze was solemn as he stared at the girl in the golden lotus. She was a Foundation establishment cultivator. She shouldn't have been able to see through space. More importantly, the Grey Mist Lord realized that Lotus Sun had remained unusually calm and collected ever since he had abducted her. The girl's body was trembling uncontrollably because of the aura he gave off. But she didn't show the slightest hint of fear. "Impossible. You're not a true son of the void yet. Although you have enormous potential. As long as you haven't returned to the void, you won't be able to obtain the enormous power of the void." The Grey Mist Lord kept thinking. "So, there's no way you could have seen through my spatial jump. Senior, haven't you noticed?" Lotus Sun calmly asked as she sat on the Buddha's golden lotus. She raised her glowing eyes and looked in a certain direction. Only then did the groundhog realize something. The shadow of the golden lotus was actually an afterimage. Although the shadow of the golden lotus was incomplete, it was still illuminated by the light. At that moment, the shadow of the golden lotus was very long. And on this afterimage, 3 lines of words had been carved. This was a note that the girl couldn't be more familiar with. Although it was short, it gave her a great sense of security. The groundhog's eyes twitched as he stared in disbelief at the message transmitted from the afterimage. He had no idea when it had happened. These 3 lines of words had actually been carved into the afterimage of the golden lotus. The first line was "Frowny Face Earth." 1 second later. So someone had sent this girl a message. After discovering the truth, the groundhog was terrified. His forehead was already sweating uncontrollably. Then he continued reading the first line. The second line was "Frowny Face, don't be afraid, don't be afraid?" Was this telling the girl not to be afraid? No wonder she had been so calm from beginning to end. Finally, the third line. This was also the third line that made the groundhog tremble with fear. "The most frowny face, I'm coming. Who wants to come?" At that moment, the sweat on the groundhog's body had already gathered into a small river at his feet. This was the Earth. 1 second later. Furthermore, he had been affected by the radiation from Lotus Sun's disappearing presence. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be anyone left who remembered them. That was the groundhog's plan. As long as he continued to hide with the girl in the Earth. 1 second later. Before long, he would be able to travel back as he pleased. He would turn into a terrifying and mysterious creature in the gray fog. Impossible. No one can find this place. No one. The groundhog roared. At that moment, a fourth line of words appeared on the afterimage of the golden lotus. It was still written by Wang Ling. It was a beautiful thin golden body. The fourth line, frowny face, I'll kill you again. When the groundhog saw this, he was scared out of his wits. He stretched out his claws and tried to flee. Since the earth 1 second later wouldn't work, then he would delay it for a few more seconds. He didn't believe that Wang Ling could find him. He swung his claws at the air. The space jump happened again. Success! At that moment, the groundhog heaved a sigh of relief. But after he calmed down, he realized that something wasn't right with his surroundings. This wasn't the top of the world he had been in at all. Don't waste your energy. I already knew that you could jump. At that moment, Wang Ling appeared and stared at him from behind as he spoke telepathically. I get it. You set up a space trap and reverse time. As long as I jump, I'll return to the past. The gray fog lord broke out in a cold sweat. But the time you adjusted isn't right. It doesn't look like the Earth 1 second earlier. Wang Ling shrugged. This certainly wasn't the Earth 1 second earlier. Because from the very beginning, he had never intended to correct the time back. After all, this was still Earth. Whether it was the Earth 1 second earlier, or the Earth 1 second later, it wouldn't be good to make a move. So Wang Ling had adjusted the time back by 1 billion points. This is the Earth of 4 billion years ago. At that moment, Wang Ling stared at the groundhog in front of him and cracked his neck. 4 billion years ago. The groundhog's astonishment at that moment couldn't be described in words. God-destroying blow. Wang Ling didn't waste any words. Another palm landed on the groundhog's body. The originally flat ground in front of him was instantly struck by Wang Ling's palm. And underground water rose up. The surging tide continued to converge, forming a vast ocean. 4 billion years later, this place became one of the most famous tourist attractions on Earth, Palm Cliff of the Sky. Chapter 1320. 4 billion years later, in the Palm Cliff of Heaven, everything returned to the right track. It was already Monday morning, November 30th. On the horizon ahead, the eastern dawn had already arrived, and the sun had just risen. Dawn gradually broke. When the first ray of sunlight hit Wang Ling's face, what he was stepping on was a dead and incomplete marmot fossil. Student Wang Ling. The girl's excited voice came from the golden lotus. I knew you would come. Yes. The red light of the rising sun reflected on Wang Ling's face, concealing his complexion. He picked up the marmot fossil on the ground and shook off the dust. Classmate Wang Ling, thank little sister Nguyen for me. The girl smiled. She was well aware that although Wang Ling had been the one to end this battle, he had been the one to do so. But there were other people she needed to thank. Wang Ling nodded, and was a man of few words. He snapped his fingers. The golden Buddha lotus was teleported back to the war sect. At that moment, Audiobook and Death Heavenly Tao were reflecting on themselves in the true venerated Great Hall. They hadn't been able to carry out Wang Ling's task well, because the protection was inadequate. That's why he took the initiative to kneel in the true sovereign's great hall to offer a humble apology. What happened? Why is Elder Zhua kneeling? I don't think there's anything I'm interested in. Was it the true sovereign who punished him? That's the weird part. Lord True Sovereign did not punish him. But Elder Zhua took the initiative to come here and beg for forgiveness. At the entrance of the hall, many meddlesome disciples came to join in the fun. What are you looking at? At the door, Feng Xing crossed his arms and berated him. Take another look and make another Huanggong secret scroll. A few of the male disciples left with their faces flushed red. No one knew if it was because of shame or because the other party had woken up. Ever since the matter of him becoming a woman had spread throughout the battle sect, this kind of thing had happened from time to time. Feng Xing had only attracted the attention of a lot of female disciples earlier, but now even male disciples were looking at him. This made Feng Xing very vexed. Get up, the two of you. Classmate Wang Ling didn't say anything. Leaning against the door frame, Feng Xing stared at the scene in the hall, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. It could only be said that whether it was Audiobook or Death Heavenly Tao, their desire to live was too strong. It was fine if he took the initiative to ask for forgiveness. Feng Xing was directly stupefied at this operation. No. Although Master didn't blame me, I can't let myself go. It's all because my cultivation is not high enough and my reaction is not fast enough. Audiobook did his best to reflect. At that time, even if Death Heavenly Tao couldn't react because of the Heavenly Tao signal shielding restriction, I had already sensed something unusual. If only I had protected Lotus Sun earlier, it wouldn't have turned out like this. No. Although Ling Jinren doesn't blame me, I can't let myself off. It's all because I didn't prepare enough and didn't anticipate the danger in advance. Death Heavenly Tao sighed. The two of them reflected on themselves in the main hall and loudly stated their mistakes, as if they were afraid that others could not hear them. Feng Xing found it funny. A few more minutes passed. A streak of golden light flew in from outside the window. The golden lotus Buddha had returned. It could only be said that Ling Jinren was truly Ling Jinren. Saving a sheep from the tiger's mouth, this kind of operation could only be described as awesome. Death Heavenly Tao was overjoyed. Neither he nor Audiobook was surprised by this result. As soon as the enlightened one made a move, one would know whether or not there was one. How could a mere groundhog stir up any waves? However, Death Heavenly Tao felt that Audiobook was a lot more excited than he had imagined. Seeing the golden lotus return, Audiobook couldn't contain his excitement. With tears in his eyes, he threw himself at it. Senior Audiobook. What's wrong, Carrot? Lotus Sun was startled by Audiobook's reaction. This was the first time she had seen Audiobook lose his composure like this. Holding the golden lotus in his hands, Audiobook burst into tears. Master's wife. You're finally back. The girl's face turned red, and the blush quickly spread to her ears. Even her snow-white neck was red. Who's your master's wife? After calming down, Audiobook thought about it and felt that he had indeed called her a little too early. It hadn't been decided yet, but he didn't regret crossing paths. At the very least, he had tested out the girl's intentions. If she didn't have those intentions towards their Shifu, why was she blushing? Sorry, Junior Lotus Sun, I was too excited. Having succeeded in his trick, Audiobook smiled like a sly old fox. It's not your fault. In the future, don't call me that. Lotus Sun kept fanning her face. But this time it would probably take a very, very long time for her face to cool down. In the forsaken land of the gods, Wang Ling casually threw the marmot's remains to the ground. Seeing that the marmot was dead, the green tong cat's eyes lit up. As expected of you. Is the contract established? Wang Ling asked expressionlessly. Yes. Ling Jinren, don't worry. From now on, I'll take all of Miss Sun's souls. With me, she won't suffer any grievances or danger. Just as we agreed. The green tong cat said. Wang Ling nodded in satisfaction. Looking at the remains of Grey Mist Lord's remains on the ground, he actually still had some doubts in his heart. To be honest, the marmot was indeed a difficult opponent. It was hard for Wang Ling to imagine that it could be resurrected so many times in perfect condition. He had rewound time to 4 billion years ago and killed the marmot. The marmot's aura had indeed disappeared from the universe. But Wang Ling still felt that there was more to this matter. I know what Ling Jinren is thinking. Rest assured, he's indeed dead. The green tong cat said. Before Ling Jinren's final palm strike, he actually still had a few lives left. But because Ling Jinren rewound time, that wasn't the time when Tao Ancestor had given him the privilege of resurrection, so he didn't come back to life. Hearing this, Wang Ling finally breathed a slight sigh of relief. The marmot incident had finally come to an end. Tomorrow was Tuesday, December 1st, which was when Dichio would be upgraded. Wang Ling planned to go to the Dead Bone Desert to take a look at Monk Golden Lamp's chaos guidance device. But before he left, Wang Ling felt that there was still something he hadn't done yet. At the same time in space, the spirit of the moon and the spirit of the earth looked at each other from afar. Spirit of the moon. I knew Ling Jinren had forgotten about me. Spirit of the earth. It's better to forget about him. Spirit of the moon nodded. That's true, otherwise, I'll be beaten every day. Look at my face, it's full of bumps and hollows. Every time he slaps me, I'm scared out of my wits. I'm much worse off than you. You're about to upgrade. Isn't upgrading to make it easier to be beaten? At that moment, the spirit of the Earth's words caused the spirits of the two planets to sink into a long silence. The spirit of the Earth sighed. To be honest, I started to fear him 4 billion years ago. Spirit of the Moon. Chapter 1321. Wang Ling had a strong feeling that that stupid groundhog might still be alive. But so far, the other party's aura had indeed disappeared. After all, it was the #1 divine beast under Dao ancestor Wang. Loopy Toad had been able to escape death with its primordial spirit back then. So this groundhog might be able to do the same. But Wang Ling wasn't worried that this groundhog would continue to cause trouble. It had been destroyed 3 times in a row. It took a long time for Loopy Toad to recover from this psychological trauma. That night, Wang Ling appeared in the Dead Bone Desert. Up ahead, he saw an intricate network of guiding devices. These devices were all made of cosmic alloy. Monk Golden Lamp had traveled to countless planets to collect the materials to build these devices. Following the monk's arrangement, metal pipes were connected from end to end according to the blueprint, and were laid out densely on the surface of the desert like a spider web. The reason why the Dead Bone Desert was called this was because there was a lot of quicksand here. If an ordinary device had been laid out on top, it would have been swallowed up by the quicksand due to its weight, and then directly sank to the bottom of the desert. But this cosmic alloy was different. Not only was it extremely sturdy, it was also as light as a feather, which was perfect for laying it out in this kind of environment. Wang Ling saw it. These cobweb-like devices finally converged at a central point in the desert. That was probably where the Chaos Egg had been placed. Brother Ling. Hey, Ling Junren is here. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Miss Awan saw Wang Ling from afar. Today was Monday, and Wang Ling should have been doing homework at this time. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal knew that a large part of the reason why he had time to join in the fun now was that number 60 High was still under construction. Because of the Foundation's previous bombing, number 60 High had delayed the start of school for some time. Ajwa had originally estimated that the repairs would be completed on Monday. However, Headmaster Chen had high construction requirements, and Ajwa had to spend some time beautifying the school environment. Thus, number 60 High's holiday would last until the weekend. The real start of school was actually next Monday, which was December 7th. Of course, it wasn't like the students of number 60 High had nothing to do before the official start of school. They still had to go to Dingting for online lessons. At that moment, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's expression abruptly changed. He stretched out his arm and pulled Wang Ling aside with a gossipy expression. Brother Ling, how is Miss Lotus Sun now? I heard she was taken away by a groundhog, and you saved her. Wang Ling. To be honest, Wang Ling was very astonished because Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had been concentrating on setting up the device, and he hadn't expected him to be so well informed. Brother Ling wants to know how I got this information, right? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal laughed. Didn't you see Ding Ding? Doesn't Ding Talk have a battle sect task force? I remember pulling you in. In order to facilitate work exchanges and mutual support, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had also set up a working group and pulled in the core members of Battle Sect. Wang Ling was startled. He really didn't notice this. This was because Ding Talk had a lot of study groups. The most important thing was that Super Chun and Hirogwa had pulled Wang Ling into quite a few homework exchange groups. On the surface, they were exchanging homework, but in fact they were copying each other. As for the Battle Sect task force that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had set up, it had been buried in the group chat. By the time Wang Ling realized it, it was already too late. Because Ajwa had already shared a lot about the mission in the task force. Look here, and here. Brother Zhua said all of them. Following chronological order, Ajwa posted his work experience directly in the group chat. AI, today's job is to visit junior sister Lotus Sun in the hospital. She's lying in the medical cabin doing sit-ups, which is really distressing. But with Shifu around, I don't think she'll run into any major problems. Today's job is to protect junior sister Lotus Sunday. With senior Death Heavenly Dao around, I feel a lot more at ease. Because student Lotus Sun has been resurrected too many times, She seems to have triggered some sort of resurrection restriction. Her body has become transparent, and her sense of existence has decreased. Fortunately, Senior Golden Lamp took action and placed Junior Sister Lotus Sun in the Buddha Golden Lotus. P.S. Shifu invited Senior Golden Lamp, but Shifu has never been so attentive to a girl before. I feel like I've discovered some incredible secret. I accompanied Junior Sister Lotus Sun home to sort out her things. Senior Death Heavenly Dao used the Great Sacrifice spell to help her burn a lot of things. Only the desk and wardrobe weren't allowed to be burned. I peeked at the desk and realized that Junior Sister Lotus Sun was actually imitating Shifu's handwriting. Today's job is to accompany Junior Sister Lotus Sun to the domain of the gods to watch the immortals fight. As soon as Shifu appeared, he pierced through Patriarch Zhou's Dao God brain, and then used the power of his virtual image to fight the 6 Dao gods. I realized that Junior Sister Lotus Sun recognized Shifu's virtual image at first glance. And then, her eyes were fixed on Shifu the whole time, and she never left him. I can't take it anymore. Recently, I've been observing Junior Sister Lotus Sun's reactions when she sees Shifu. It's so interesting. My aunt laughed the whole time, and I couldn't stop. AI, it's so good to be young. Is this what it means to be young? Today's job is to protect Junior Sister Lotus Sun in Battle Sec's underground seclusion cellar with Senior Death Heavenly Dao. In order to be able to recall her experiences as a soul when she returns to her body in the future, Junior Sister Lotus Sun has worked very hard to organize every little detail of what has happened these days in her little notebook. P.S. Selling a copy of Shifu's personal drawing by student Lotus Sunday PM required. Sob. Shifu's wife is back safe and sound. Shifu is awesome. Broken voice. Looking at the messages Audiobook had sent in the work group, the corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. It looks like Brother Ling has also noticed. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled. Actually, it was Brother Zhua who sent these messages to Tok in the space, and he was probably the only one who could see them. But Ding Tok seemed to be working with Tok a while ago, and their messages started to synchronize. Student Zhua didn't seem to realize this, and then his messages in the space were synchronized with the Ding Tok group. Wang Ling. Don't worry, Brother Ling. I've already confirmed this. Brother Zhua's Ding Tok account is a smurf, and there's only one battle sect working group in it, so the messages he posted in the space are only synchronized here. But judging from Brother Zhua's reaction, it looks like he hasn't realized it yet. Wang Ling. Elsewhere in Battle Sec's underground cellar, Audiobook updated his message again. He didn't post it in the space. Instead, he directly posted it in Battle Sec's working group. He deliberately wrote in his work diary in a tone that sounded like he was posting in the space. Junior Sister Lotus Sun seems to be angry after I called you Shifu. She's blushing and hasn't said a word. Shifu, this is all I can help you with. Wang Ling. Chapter 1322. It had always been a label for onlookers to watch a good show. Audiobook had infiltrated deep into enemy territory, braved danger alone, and was concerned about his Shifu's marriage. He had played dumb in secret, but in reality, he was testing the waters. His methods were astonishing. Of course, there was still a long way to go on this path. Audiobook wasn't in a hurry. He had a lot of plans in mind, most of which he had wanted to realize when he was a student, but hadn't been able to. As the saying went, if there was no chance, then create one. Audiobook was waiting for this matter to be over before he pulled Lotus Sun into Battle Sec's working group. When that time came, he would be able to use work as a pretext to take his junior sister to cause trouble. At that moment, there were still 3 hours left until Tuesday, December 1st. Wang Ling saw that Monk Golden Lamp was almost done setting things up in the Dead Bone Desert. Everything was now ready except for the final push. Wang Ling saw the monk's egg in the center of the cluster of devices. The eggshell was patterned with a purple pattern, and had a crystalline texture, which gave off an aura of primal chaos. Furthermore, it was astonishingly dense. After his fight with the marmot, Wang Ling had a deeper understanding of the power of primal chaos. At the same time, he understood how powerful it was. If it hadn't been for the layer of primal chaos fog around its body, the marmot would have died long ago. He didn't need to use any serious palm techniques at all to easily deal with it. But with this layer of gray fog, Wang Ling's ordinary palm strength really wouldn't be able to hurt the marmot. So in theory, if he kept using ordinary palm techniques to slap the marmot, disregarding the consumption of the power of primal chaos, the marmot should be able to receive an infinite number of slaps. But unfortunately, there were no ifs. Because no one could receive so many slaps from Wang Ling in their lifetime. This monk's 10 slaps was already the highest record. Wang Ling felt that it would be very difficult for anyone to break through in the coming days. This day has finally come. The monk looked at his masterpiece and was filled with emotion. It hadn't hatched successfully in 300 lives, and now it finally had a chance to hatch while Earth was undergoing its tribulation. Can't you be sure what will hatch? Wang Ling asked curiously. Yes, Ling Zhenren. The monk nodded and narrowed his eyes at the chaos egg in front of him. Before it hatches, it's impossible to guess what will come out of the primal chaos egg. No one knows the final combination of the chaos sequence before it breaks out of its shell. After the monk finished speaking, Wang Ling fell silent. Because he had already seen what was inside the chaos egg. The monk quickly caught the look in his eyes. Immortal? Did you see something? Wang Ling didn't say anything, and just patted the monk on the shoulder with a meaningful expression on his face. The secrets of heaven must not be revealed. He had used the king's eye to spy on secrets, but that was also because of the rules. Although he already knew the answer, there was no way he would tell the monk. Otherwise, it might change the law of causality and lead to some unnecessary disasters. This penniless monk understands. If the perfected one is unwilling to say, then this penniless monk will not ask further. The monk was an open-minded person. When he saw the glint in Wang Ling's eyes, he knew that it wasn't convenient to reveal this matter. At the same time, he was astonished. In the end, the power of Wang Ling's king's eye was beyond his imagination. After all, it was a divine item that did not belong to the Tao. It could even penetrate the primal chaos gene sequence. One had to know that before the chaos egg officially hatched, there could be as many as 1 trillion combinations of the chaos sequence. This was definitely not something a normal human could calculate. But Wang Ling had actually seen through it at a glance. As expected of Ling Zhenren, the monk felt ashamed of his inferiority. He really wanted to know the result, but the truth was that he didn't care that much about the result itself. No matter what was in the egg, the monk would accept it all. After all, he had already invested 300 years of blood and sweat into it. The monk felt that he had been a little unethical when he had used the earth to undergo a tribulation to hatch the egg. He was already grateful that Wang Ling didn't blame him. The monk just hoped that the thing that popped out of the egg wouldn't be too strange. Battle Sect, Seclusion Cellar, Room 331. Looking at the image on the screen, the girl in the golden lotus asked, Senior Audiobook, what on earth is in the egg? Because the original Room 328 had been damaged and was currently being repaired, Audiobook could only take Lotus Sun to a new room. It's hard to say. After all, Senior Golden Lamp spent 300 lifetimes to hatch it. Audiobook rubbed his chin and said, Does Senior Death Heavenly Tao know what's inside? I'm afraid that Ling Zhenren is the only one who knows this secret before it officially hatches. Death Heavenly Tao said, It's like Schrodinger's cat. You won't know what's inside the egg until the moment it's born. For example, when Miss Sun gives birth, you won't know whether the child is a boy or a girl until the moment it's born. Otherwise, anything is possible. Don't use me as an example. Lotus Sun protested. Cough cough, Senior Death Heavenly Tao is right. Audiobook cleared his throat and said, But judging from my Shifu's eyes, I think it might be a treasure. I can clearly see the astonishment in Shifu's eyes. An astonished expression? You mean classmate Wang Ling? Lotus Sun was full of questions. But why do I only see classmate Wang Ling's dead fish eyes? He. Junior sister Lotus Sun, are you usually too embarrassed to look my Shifu in the eye? Audiobook smirked. Of course not. The girl hadn't expected him to see right through her. Her face, which had just calmed down, started to burn up again. Junior sister Lotus Sun, if you want to understand my Shifu, you can start with me. I'm an informant for free. In any case, you're now a soul. Once you return to your body, you won't remember anything. You can ask me anything you want. Lotus Sun, Senior Joie, I realize that you've become bad. It's not that I've become bad, but that on the path of learning, one should not be ashamed to ask questions. This is what I've always preached to the children as the general administration of 100 schools. Don't be afraid when you run into trouble, you must ask Shifu. Understand? After saying that, Ajwa chuckled. You only see my Shifu's dead fish eyes, which proves that you're still too young. If you want to discern what on earth my Shifu's eyes are expressing, and what kind of feelings he's expressing, you have to start with the details. The girl didn't reply, but was in fact already secretly taking notes in her little notebook. For example, when Shifu is surprised, his right eyebrow will involuntarily tremble. When Shifu is angry, his face will darken and his eyebrows will be lowered. Some of his hair will float up slightly. Also, when Shifu expresses his love. Love? Yes. Ajwa said. It's only when he expresses his love that I still haven't figured out. For example, when Shifu is eating his favorite crispy noodle snack, he's always expressionless, without even a slight expression. Ah, is that so? Lotus Sun nodded. She felt that she had learned a lot of useful information. The expression of this emotion is very vague. It's also very hard to define. Junior sister Lotus Sun has to work hard. Ajwa said. Me? Chapter 13:23. There was less than an hour before Earth's tribulation. In the Dead Bone Desert, Huaxiao Alliance and Battle Sect dispatched guards and sect disciples to patrol the edge of the desert, and set up a high-altitude restriction to prevent cultivators from flying through the desert. Attention all units. In half an hour, evacuate all patrols to a safe area 1,000 li away as quickly as possible. Don't linger around. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked up at the sky and gave instructions using the collective telepathy spell. The impact and destructive power of the chaotic force was incomparably huge. Even if it was just the power of radiation, it was not something that ordinary cultivators could withstand. Therefore, other than the core members, all the patrolling personnel had to evacuate before the tribulation. I'm so nervous. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal rubbed his hands. Huaxiao Alliance had given him full authority to command Earth's tribulation upgrade this time. This was a serious matter, and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't want to disappoint the head of state. Whether or not their battle sect could obtain a decisive position in the international cultivation circle depended on this wave. It's very strange. Why were the heads of state able to approve Earth's upgrade so quickly this time? Loopy Toad suddenly said at that moment. On the side, Little Silver replied. I heard from Grenade Throwing that all the countries have in fact been thinking about upgrading Earth for a long time. But he had never found a way. Now that we have Divine Tao Star's help, we naturally agree. Why is Brother Dog here? Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal asked as he looked at this familiar emerald green figure. I'm about to become a holy beast, but there's still a big gap between a holy beast and a divine beast. It should be an excellent opportunity to watch a divine beast hatch from a close distance, Loopy Toad replied. A holy beast can evolve into a divine beast? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was startled. In theory, yes. It's just a matter of physical fitness. If a spirit beast wants to evolve into a holy beast, it has to learn how to refine its primordial chi and integrate it into its bloodline. Finally, the blood in its body will be transformed into the blood of a holy beast. Only then can it complete its evolution. At this moment, Monk Jin Deng nodded. And if a holy beast wants to evolve into a divine beast, it's essentially the same. It needs to have enough physical qualities to accept the power of chaos. But it is a very difficult thing to do. Not even Devil King? Asked Loopy Toad. You mean the king of the sacred beasts, the Rakshasa king? If he reached the level of the king of holy beasts, he might be able to give it a try. However, ever since the incident with the sacred beast, this penniless monk remembers that Rakshasa King's spirit has been declining day by day, and he no longer wants to improve. His physique isn't as good as before. If he tries to fuse with the chaotic force, there's a high chance he'll die. Tyrant deduced. Hearing this, the crowd was baffled. Elsewhere, in BattleSec's underground seclusion cellar, Audra was introducing the other core members of BattleSec to the girl. Lotus Sun already knew all of the people who had stayed behind to guard the mountain gate. The remaining core members were all gathered in the Ghostbone Desert. The image on the screen showed everyone, which made it much easier for Audra to point them out. Do you see that barefoot silver-haired one? He's called Little Silver. It was a saint beast. He had been taken in by his master a long time ago. And she's always sticking to Sherfu. As Audra introduced them, he also observed the girl's reaction. However, the girl's reaction was calmer than Audra had imagined. Do you like sticking to classmate Wang Ling? Actually, this was normal. Classmate Wang Ling had always been very popular. By the way, where does Miss Little Silver live? What is junior sister Lotus Sun trying to do? It's nothing. I just wanted to send some gifts and say hello. Thank you, Miss Little Silver, for taking care of classmate Wang Ling all this time. Although the girl still had a generous and decent smile on her face, there was clearly something wrong with her tone. Audra felt that if he didn't explain this clearly, things might get out of hand. How was this asking for his address and giving him a gift? It clearly looked like she wanted to send him a razor blade. At that moment, Audra coughed slightly. Cough cough. Junior sister Lotus Sun, Little Silver is actually a boy. As soon as he said this, the seclusion room fell into a brief silence. A few seconds later, the girl's expression clearly improved, and she covered her little mouth in surprise. He's so beautiful, he's actually a boy. Lotus Sun covered her little mouth in slight surprise. Indeed, Little Silver has always been mistaken for a girl. When he went to the Wang family's small villa, he even mistook his grandmaster for someone else, Audra said with a smile. I also thought he was a girl just now. Hehehe, junior sister Lotus Sun, don't you feel relieved? Lotus Sun realized. This senior of hers was getting more and more sophisticated. Furthermore, it could be described as impossible to guard against. AI, young people nowadays. Death Heavenly Tao also sighed at that moment. Senior, why do you sound so resentful? Audra couldn't help asking. I just think that nowadays, gender doesn't mean everything. I think that if you like someone, you should take the initiative in time. You should know that there are more male cultivators than female cultivators in Huaxiao Nation. So nowadays, it's not necessarily female cultivators who are fighting over Dao partners with female cultivators, but male cultivators as well. Lotus Sun. Audra, Senior. I feel like you're hinting at something. Am I? Death Heavenly Tao was completely unaware. Audra. I think I might have led you into a ditch, hee. Death Heavenly Tao. Question mark. It had to be said that Death Heavenly Tao was an honest man. He actually didn't have any bad intentions. He had really just been led into a ditch by Audra. He had said a lot of things in line with Audra's point of view, and didn't have any other thoughts. But Audra's ability to lead was really too strong. Even Death Heavenly Tao himself hadn't expected the girl in the Golden Lotus to blush after hearing what he said. As a master of rhythm, Audra had already achieved his initial goal. Even Heavenly Tao had been led into a ditch by him. It was likely that more and more people would fall into it in the future. Hehehe. On the other side, Wang Ling was paying close attention to what was going on at the scene. He had in fact had another reason for asking Lord Ma to call Loopy Toad here. After Loopy Toad had been teleported here, Survival Heavenly Tao was the only one left in the Wang family's small villa, drawing talismans in a lonely and cold manner. Do you feel it too? Wang Ling asked telepathically at that moment. That's right. Loopy Toad nodded. It could sense that there was an extremely powerful soul floating around in the nearby space. That was right, the soul wasn't anything else, it was that stupid groundhog. This guy hadn't been resurrected from the forsaken land of the gods. Instead, it had deliberately kept itself in soul form. Its goal was already very clear. It wanted to seize the body of the divine beast in the chaos egg the moment it broke out of its shell. What a stupid groundhog. Loopy Toad couldn't help laughing. You'll have to rely on yourself. I won't help you, Wang Ling said telepathically at that moment. In fact, he had called Loopy Toad here to benefit it. But for some reason, Wang Ling couldn't help it in this matter. Don't worry, little masterling. I'm determined to get this mere soul remnant. Loopy Toad smiled confidently. This groundhog's little tricks were all leftovers from back then. Chapter 1324. Loopy Toad couldn't be more familiar with the method of using a primordial spirit to escape back then. Now that he thought back to it, he was even feeling a little sympathetic toward the spirit of the groundhog that was wandering nearby. That was because they were pitiful people who had been repeatedly killed several times. Wang Ling's label as a friend of animals couldn't be taken off. The only difference was, Wang Ling and Loopy Toad were each other's childhood shadows. Between Wang Ling and the groundhog, the latter was the most traumatized. He didn't want to alert the enemy. Loopy Toad saw that Wang Ling had already left. Sure enough, its choice back then was correct. Although he had been repeatedly killed by Wang Ling several times. But with Wang Ling, there was indeed meat to eat. Earth's tribulation was about to begin. Loopy Toad calculated the time. There were currently less than 15 minutes left. However, it had already accurately sensed a certain soul that was lurking there, ready to make a move. On the other side, on a sand dune in the undead desert, the gray mist lord stared at the core area in front of him that was about to be hit by chaos. Yes, he wasn't really dead. Although his physical body was destroyed, his soul managed to escape. Wang Ling was too scary. To put it nicely, he had adjusted the time by billions of points. In the end, he was brought to Earth 4 billion years ago and beaten up. The privilege that the Tao ancestor had left him was indeed to revive in full condition. However, after a certain number of revivals, he would lose control of the revival point. He had to go through the forsaken land of the gods, and the green Tong cat could confirm his next resurrection location. And the Qing Tong cat in the forsaken land of the gods didn't like him. It would definitely send him to that terrifying youth's side. At that time, even if he really resurrected, it would be a waste. So after weighing the pros and cons, the Grey Mist Lord made a bold decision. He decided to stay in his soul state. There was no need to revive so quickly. However, in his soul state, his combat strength would be greatly reduced. Moreover, as time passed, his strength would also weaken. A total of 4 billion years had passed. Currently, his soul energy was already extremely weak. But fortunately, everything in front of him gave the Grey Mist Lord hope. He saw a chaos egg that was about to break out of its shell. As long as he took advantage of the moment the new mythological beast broke out of the eggshell, he would be able to complete the possession. He could become a brand new mythological beast. In this way, he had a new body. Not only would he be able to recover his strength, but he would also be able to get rid of that groundhog body that had been bothering him for a long time. It had to be known that the monk's egg hadn't even hatched in 300 lifetimes. Needless to say, there were definitely very rare and precious divine beasts inside. This day has finally come. On the sand dune, the soul groundhog was extremely touched. Tears from the depths of his soul gushed out uncontrollably. He didn't have to be a groundhog anymore. However, right at this moment, the soul groundhog suddenly felt a chill run down its spine. That's not right, why is it so cold? The soul groundhog shuddered upon seeing this. When he turned around, he suddenly discovered that there was a strangely long, sticky tongue in the distance launching a surprise attack at his back. Even though the groundhog's soul was extremely feeble in its soul form, it still had the ability to react. His reaction was faster than Loopy Toad had imagined. He almost subconsciously leaned to the side to avoid Loopy Toad's surprise attack. It had been a full 4 billion years. In order to preserve the power of this remnant soul, and ensure that it didn't dissipate, the groundhog had gone through many calamities. It had escaped death time and time again, and had developed an astonishing reaction ability. I can't beat it, but I can dodge it. Earth's upgrade was about to begin. In order to buy time for the soul to possess Loopy Toad, the groundhog's first reaction was naturally to avoid battle. Loopy Toad hadn't expected this groundhog to react so quickly. It clearly only had a remnant soul left. How many sneak attacks did it have to experience to develop this ability? Loopy Toad ridiculed in its heart. But it was determined to obtain this groundhog's remnant soul. This was Tao Ancestor Wang's #1 mythological beast. If it could devour it, even if it was just a remnant soul, Loopy Toad's strength would increase tremendously in a short period of time. Oh no, this soul is too delicious. Loopy Toad couldn't wait any longer, its eyes full of desire. The fragrance of the groundhog's remnant soul made Loopy Toad salivate uncontrollably. Seeing the groundhog's remnant soul flee nimbly, Loopy Toad hurriedly chased after it. Don't run. Stop right there. Damn it, it's actually at this time. It was only one step away from possessing Loopy Toad's soul. The groundhog never expected to run into such a difficult enemy at this very last moment. Why was this Akita's fur green? And it was fluorescent. And it could even stick out a tongue as long as a toad's. The groundhog didn't know much about Loopy Toad's origins. But since the other party had come for its remnant soul, it clearly didn't have good intentions. There were less than 10 minutes left. As long as it could stall for time until the primal chaos strike hit, it would be victorious. When that time came, it would enter the body of this mythological beast. Even if this mythological beast was a cub, as long as it had a physical body, it would be able to summon the primal chaos gray fog. With the support of that layer of power, Yang-Chi was able to move freely. Not to mention a mere green-furred dog. As long as it didn't run into Wang Ling, he didn't fear anyone here. However, Loopy Toad's difficulty was beyond the groundhog's expectations. Loopy Toad's soul state was already very well hidden, but this green-furred dog seemed to be able to smell it, and kept chasing it. Don't run. Let me lick you. Loopy Toad ran over from a distance, and swiftly stuck out its tongue in his direction, trying to suck him directly into its belly as it made a constant slurping sound. F***K. This was a licking dog. The groundhog couldn't help cursing. It had never been bullied by a holy beast like this before. The groundhog swiftly controlled its soul to dive down and hide in the sand. Loopy Toad dug a hole so quickly that it made one's hair stand on end as it relentlessly chased after it. There was an old saying about a dog catching a mouse, and meddling in other people's business. The groundhog felt that it had never seen this before in its life. It never thought that this saying would actually come true for itself. It roared in its heart. Just a little more. Just a little more. Then it would have a real brand new body. At that moment, in the sky above the Deadbone Desert, whether it was the groundhog or Loopy Toad, both could already sense an indescribably massive amount of spirit power starting to converge. The primal chaos strike was about to begin. It was now officially in the countdown phase. At that moment, Loopy Toad had given up on the chase. But that didn't mean it had given up. Given the current situation, there was no point in continuing the chase. It would be better to change its strategy. Roughly another 30 seconds passed. A massive purple thundercloud gathered in the sky, and a terrifying red light erupted from within. It was like the eye of a demon staring at the earth. The chaos strike was about to begin. The monk stood in front of the chaos egg, turned his Buddha beads, and silently recited Buddhist scriptures. He raised his hand, and the chaos guidance device instantly activated. Countless conduits instantly burst forth with golden light. And in the end, they abruptly surged toward the chaos egg at the core of the device. The monk had already tested this process over 100 times to ensure that nothing went wrong. The moment the golden light converged on the chaos egg, kaboom! In the sky, a massive pillar of chaos light descended with destructive power. For a moment, the entire earth was shaken. The seawater churned and formed a massive tsunami. But this was a situation that had long been anticipated. Cultivators from various countries had already worked together to set up the sea-calming barrier to prevent the tsunami from eroding the earth, keeping the surging seawater outside. At the same time, the earth's crust trembled. Almost all the cultivators on earth who were still in seclusion were alarmed by this tremor. For a moment, they all opened their eyes. This violent tremor made them feel uneasy. The spirit beasts in the forest formed a beast tide, and they rushed madly through the forest. Birds chirped and beasts roared into the sky. It was as if the entire earth was boiling over at this special and great moment. The chaos strike was just that terrifying. But all of this was still under consideration. The chaos strike was bound to cause some natural effects. But given the spells of modern cultivators and the presence of almighties everywhere, it could be prevented and controlled. Of course, If the monk hadn't made preparations in advance and used the device he had developed to guide the energy, this impact would have instantly split the earth in half like a watermelon. The terrifying impact lasted for a full 3 minutes. Then, everything returned to calm. During these 3 minutes, all the cultivators on Earth felt terrified and uneasy. The planet had upgraded. This was a famous scene that no cultivator on Earth had ever seen before. Now, with the combined support of the heads of state of various countries, Huaxiao Alliance and Battle Sect, the Earth had withstood the pressure of this massive chaos catastrophe caused by the upgrade. Everyone was witnessing history. Is it done? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked excitedly. It's done. The monk opened his eyes and gave a thumbs up. The fact that the Earth had survived the chaos strike unscathed meant that the Earth had completed its upgrade. In that instant, the purple thunderclouds in the sky dispersed. Then, there was an explosion of boundless spirit chi of heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, the entire Earth was covered in a thick layer of spirit light and immortal fog. Earth's cultivators started to cheer. One by one they flew freely through the air on their spirit swords, breathing in this thick immortal fog which instantly nourished their internal organs. This was a carnival for all the cultivators on Earth. All the cultivators were celebrating in their own way. Near the desert of dead bones, the patrols and disciples of Battle Sect and Huaxiao Alliance burst into thunderous applause and jubilation. At the same time, the heads of state of various countries who were closely watching the upgrade plan from a distance also burst into thunderous applause and sent congratulatory messages to the head of state of Huaxiao Alliance's office. It really worked. Little Silver pounced on Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal excitedly and hugged him. Brother Silver, you've put on weight again. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he let Little Silver wrap around him like a koala. Everyone was very excited. There was nothing more inspiring than witnessing a successful tribulation with their own eyes. It was at that moment that Monk Golden Lamp's Chaos Egg finally reacted. Hey, Monk! Your egg finally moved. Miss Awan didn't care about Earth's upgrade at all. She had actually been looking forward to seeing what kind of mythical beast would break out of the egg. This guy, who hadn't been born for 300 lifetimes, had to be very handsome. It was sparkling. It was domineering. It was a creature that could shock people. Crack. A small crack appeared on the crystal-like body of the egg. Although they couldn't clearly see what the guy in the egg looked like, a powerful aura of primal chaos had already surged out. Congratulations, Master. This must be a rare beast. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hurriedly congratulated him. Thank you for your kind words, Master Venerable. Let's hope this guy comes out on his own. The monk smiled. At that moment, the groundhog, which had been lurking in the desert for a long time, finally had its chance. Here's my chance. It roared excitedly and jumped out of the desert as fast as it could. On the other side, Loopy Toad also felt that its chance had come. It had given up on chasing the groundhog earlier, because it had planned to stay by the Chaos Egg and wait for the groundhog to walk into its trap. But there was only one chance like this. If it didn't succeed, it would be very embarrassing. At that moment, it could already sense the strong fragrance of the groundhog's remnant soul getting closer and closer. The other party was approaching the surface at top speed. Here's my chance. The moment the groundhog's remnant soul jumped out of the desert, Loopy Toad concentrated all its energy and stuck out its long tongue. Poor guy. You've just been born, but this immortal has already taken over your body. The groundhog laughed wildly as it scuttled out of the desert and abruptly rammed its head into the Chaos Egg. It seemed that the monk had already anticipated this. He didn't move and didn't stop the groundhog from doing anything. Oh no! Loopy Toad's tongue didn't directly hit the groundhog, but in that instant, it still felt as if something was stuck to its tongue. Loopy Toad turned pale with fright. It immediately realized what had happened. The groundhog had succeeded in taking over the body. Furthermore, it had pushed the soul of the divine beast out of the eggshell. Its tongue was now wrapped around the soul of the divine beast that the monk had truly given birth to. I Huhan-san am back. At that moment, the groundhog that had successfully taken over the body in the eggshell was beyond excited at having seized a new body. It stretched out its claws and directly broke out of the shell. Wait. There seemed to be something wrong with the situation. Why did these claws look so familiar? They didn't seem any different from his own claws, except that they were a little smaller. But very quickly, the Grey Mist Lord realized what on earth was going on. He had racked his brains to take over the divine beast egg in the eggshell in an attempt to get rid of his body as a groundhog. But the Grey Mist Lord never expected there was another groundhog in the eggshell. Why is it still a groundhog? Ah! At that moment, the groundhog clutched its head and roared in defeat. Chapter 1325. Life is a circle. The reincarnation of all things was another cycle. Although the monk didn't know what was inside the chaos egg, the instant the eggshell cracked open, he could predict what would happen next. The groundhog's possession had succeeded, but the monk had no intention of stopping it. As for the other marmot that had been forced out of its body, Loopy Toad had already eaten it and was digesting it. He definitely couldn't spit it out. Bah, everything is fate. The monk bowed and walked to the front. He didn't say anything and only stared at the groundhog's lower body. Grey Mist Lord felt a little uncomfortable under the monk's gaze. However, he felt that the monk's eyes were hinting at something. He hugged his head and followed the monk's gaze. To his surprise, he discovered that he didn't have any left. This groundhog. It was actually a F***king female. At the thought that it would never be able to live a blissful life again, the groundhog clutched its head and let loose a long howl before its body was instantly petrified and transformed into a statue-like being. Master, this is? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was extremely astonished. He's completely isolated. Tyrant sighed and said, the divine beasts born from the primal chaos have the ability to evade the Heart Devil. They will never be invaded by the Heart Devil. Once an inner demon is born, the body will automatically enter a purification mode. Until the inner demon is completely eradicated, the body will become a chaotic sculpture like this. Having said that, the monk took out a world-defying artifact. It was a Buddhist sword. It was made up of 49 copper coins engraved with the Buddhist seal of the swastika. The monk casually slashed at the petrified groundhog. The sword clashed with the groundhog's body, and a crisp metallic clang erupted. The sword chi was bounced off and cut into the sand dune in the distance, causing a huge explosion. It's actually so hard. Everyone was astonished. The chaos sculpture is indestructible. I'm afraid that unless it's Ling Jinren's palm strength, it's unrealistic to destroy it, the monk said. Nah, Buddhist monk, how long will it take for it to recover? Miss Awan stroked the petrified groundhog's round head with a smile. The body of the female marmot that Grey Mist Lord had possessed was still in the state of a chick. Compared to the original Grey Mist Lord, which was overweight, it was only a little bigger now. From the looks of it, it was an adorable creature. So cute. Good cue. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm petrified, it would definitely feel very good. Miss Awan said. To be honest, it definitely doesn't feel as good as Master's, Little Silver said at that moment. Is Ling Jinren's face very soft? Everyone was curious. I haven't touched it, I just heard Grandmaster mention it. Little Silver remembered when he had been a guest at the Wang family's small villa. Mother Wang took out a photo of Wang Ling as a child. That face was really bouncy. Even now, he felt that Master's face was so red that water could be squeezed out of it. However, no one dared to try it, because he didn't have the guts. Sigh, I really want to pinch a real person's face. It's better if you don't court death. Master will be angry. All of a sudden, everyone's conversation shifted from the adorable petrified groundhog to the issue of face molding. The speed at which the topic changed made the monk feel amused. How about this? Since everyone is curious, why don't we make a bet? What? Monk, you're betting too? You're not a monk? I'm not betting, but this poor monk can offer you a reward. The monk smiled slightly as he casually picked up the shell of the chaos egg in front of him. The shell of a divine beast is a top-notch material for making powerful magic artifacts, and is a priceless treasure. If anyone can pinch Ling Jinren's face, this poor monk can personally customize a powerful Buddhist magic artifact for them. A magic artifact personally customized by Monk Jin Deng. and made from the shell of a divine beast. I wanted a little. Fine. I'll participate. I'll participate too. For a moment, many people raised their hands. It was just pinching a face. As long as the timing was right, Ling Jinren might not be angry. This was what they thought in their hearts. I don't think there's any need to restrict the registration. Everyone in Battle Sect can participate, including inner and outer sect disciples and core members. Whoever can pinch it wins. Let's do that then. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. Little Silver and Loopy Toad trembled on the side. This group of people was too bold. They really didn't want to live anymore. But by the way, what about this petrified marmot? At that moment, someone finally realized that the topic seemed to be getting further and further off track, so they directed everyone's attention back to the roaring marmot, who was holding its head in its hands and petrified. It takes time to purify one's inner demon. Grey Fog Lord waited for so long, but in the end, he still possessed the marmot's body. That's the first blow. The monk sighed and said, after successfully possessing the marmot, he discovered that his egg was empty. That's the second blow. Given the birth of an inner demon under such a double blow, he probably won't be able to wake up for a while. This poor monk and Ling Jinren are about to go to the unspeakable, and we can't take him with us. In my opinion, why don't we set up a sealing formation and move his petrified body there first? A sealing magic array? That way, once he wakes up, he won't immediately break the seal and commit crimes. Although Grey Fog Lord can still use the primal chaos fog, he's still a baby, and its power is far weaker than when he was at his peak. I see. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. Then that's the only way. Senior Immortal, I'll have to trouble you to keep an eye on him while I and Ling Jinren go to the unspeakable, the monk said. Saying that, he took out a Vairocana Prajna Sutra scroll from his sleeve and gave it to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. This is the sutra for a true venerated to break through to venerated immortal. Consider it a token of my appreciation. But I'm not a Buddhist disciple. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled. Realm cultivation has nothing to do with whether you're a Buddhist disciple or not. As long as you have a good heart, you're qualified to cultivate. Monk Golden Lamp smiled. In that case, thank you very much, Master. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal bowed. Elsewhere, in Battle Sect's underground seclusion cellar, faced with Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and the other's face-pinching challenge, Audra didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In this world, I'm afraid no one has pinched Shifu's face except Grandmaster and Grandmaster. Junior sister, do you want to try? At that moment, Audra turned to look at Lotus Sunday. How can a girl casually pinch a boy's face? It has to be a very close relationship. Otherwise it'll be misunderstood. Lotus Sun was instantly at a loss for words. Seeing the girl's panicked expression, Audra laughed in his heart. Chapter 1326. In the center of Battle Sect's central lake, there was a tower buried in the water. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal brought the monk here and gave a detailed explanation of the tower in the water. This was designed when the sect was first established to suppress evil. Battle Sect's facilities are indeed complete. The monk nodded. In modern cultivation society, there weren't many buildings in sects that were specifically used to seal evil. This type of building was also known as a spirit suppression facility, and was mostly used in ancient times to imprison vicious beasts or extremely evil monsters. As soon as the monk saw the tower in the water, he already knew its structure. It was built at the intersection of 6 underground spirit veins, and any evil beings that were sealed within it would have almost no ability to escape. What was more, now that the earth had upgraded, the level of the underground spirit veins had also changed. The original sky veins had become god veins, and the earth veins had become sky veins. That was to say, the 6 underground spirit veins in Battle Sect's water had originally been earth veins, and now that they had been upgraded to sky veins, their power was unparalleled. The monk threw a golden bead into the lake, and the golden light penetrated the surface of the lake, causing golden ripples to appear in the center of Battle Sect. What a powerful Buddhist light! Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was astonished. This poor monk sealed this marmot's chaos sculpture in the Buddha bead, adding on the seal of the tower in battle sex water. Even if he overcomes his inner demon, he won't be able to break out in the short term, said Jin Deng. He recited Buddhist scriptures and worked together with Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to cast a spell to open the gate of the tower in the water. Then, the golden bead was immediately swallowed by the tower in the water, and the surface of the lake instantly calmed down and returned to normal. After doing all this, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Will he understand? This is a pitiful marmot, and also a stupid marmot. I believe that when this poor monk and Ling Jinren return from the unspeakable, he will understand. The monk said, redeeming himself by doing meritorious deeds and serving this poor monk and Ling Jinren is his only way out. After all, he was the #1 divine beast under Tao ancestor Wang back then. As a proud groundhog, it had become accustomed to doing whatever it wanted, so it had to choose the path of following its heart. This was a very difficult decision. However, the monk still believed that this groundhog would admit defeat in the end. After all, Ling Jinren was probably the only one who could forcefully defy the will of the heavens and change the physiological structure of a divine beast like the egg whips empty. For the sake of a happy life, he had to admit defeat. As he pondered, the monk suddenly thought of something else. Perfected Sovereign, I heard that you've captured the other 2 children of the void? Tomorrow he would head to the unspeakable land. As for the mastermind behind the scenes of the unspeakable, he was also the target that the monk had been keeping a close eye on. Back when the groundhog had concealed itself in the gray mist, its identity hadn't been revealed yet, so it was also a suspect. However, the groundhog was no longer a suspect. Therefore, if the gap in the unspeakable land was artificially torn open, then the unspeakable land would be destroyed. The Void Master and the Fortune Teller were the biggest suspects. Before setting off, Tyrant wanted to know more clues. Yes, Jiang Xiaoqie and Yi Jiang are currently in the battle sect. How are they doing now? They haven't given off the smell of the void from beginning to end, which is completely different from Miss Lotus Sun's situation, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Could there be a problem somewhere? It's indeed a little strange. The monk was also astonished. Book of Sage Immortal rarely made mistakes in its calculations. But if Yi Jiang and Jiang Xiaoqie were children of the void, then they should have given off the smell of the void long ago. The monk turned his Buddha beads and pinched his fingers together to calculate. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal saw steam rise from the 6 ring scars on the top of the monk's head, which made a humming sound like the chimney of an old-fashioned train. This was a phenomenon that occurred when the monk's brain worked too fast during a complicated calculation process in order to dissipate heat. A large amount of heat would come from the 6 ring scars on the top of Monk Jin Deng's head. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal thought that if there was a wok at this time, he could make hot pot on the monk's head. It took the monk a long time to calculate. Previously, he had always suspected that the unspeakable land had something to do with the incident in the void. But now it seemed that if Jiang Xiaoqie and Yi Jiang hadn't become children of the void, then the monk felt that there might be another possibility. That was, someone might have deliberately misled them. He turned his gaze to the void. And the Lord of the Void might also be someone who was being used. Not good. About 5 or 6 minutes later, Monk Jin Deng raised his head, as if he had suddenly thought of something. What's wrong, Grandmaster? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. Where is Miss Sun's body now? The monk asked anxiously. In the Great Hall of True Venerate, someone has been assigned to look after it. Let's go take a look. By the central lake, Monk Jin Deng's expression was unusually anxious. The 2 of them turned into 2 streams of light, and swiftly approached the Great Hall of True Venerate. At that moment the girl's body, which had been blessed, was still lying quietly in the medical cabin in the main hall. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was sitting cross-legged in front of the medical cabin, guarding it. When he arrived here, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal suddenly felt the figure in front of him blur, as if he was looking at Wang Ling himself guarding Lotus Sunday. After all, Crispy Noodles was Wang Ling's real clone, and the 2 of them looked alike. Even Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that this was an illusion that happened every now and then. Open it. Given the urgency of the situation, the monk requested crispy noodles Dao Monarch as soon as he landed. Open it. Grandmaster might have thought of something. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded on the side. With grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's order, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch got up and carefully opened the cover of the medical cabin. The monk spun his prayer beads quickly in his hands, and his expression was very nervous. He hoped that his judgment had been wrong. Otherwise, this would really be a little scary. However, the moment he examined the girl's body again, the monk's entire expression changed, and his breathing almost instantly became rapid. I was still a step too late. The monk sighed. Grandmaster, what on earth is going on? Haven't you noticed yet? The monk said as he looked at the girl's body. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal carefully observed the girl in the medical cabin. At first, he didn't notice anything unusual. But as he looked, he very quickly noticed something. He realized that the girl in the medical cabin actually didn't have a shadow. I've been tricked. The monk felt a little headache coming on. If this poor monk's guess is correct, Miss Sun has a twin void physique. Twin void physique? That is to say, Miss Sun and her shadow are both children of the void, said the monk. It has something to do with shadow Dao? It does. But Venerable Nguyen didn't do it on purpose. The monk shook his head. Looking at the current situation, it should be Miss Sun's shadow who has awakened on its own. Hearing this, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was instantly enlightened. Self-awakening. Wasn't this similar to the situation with Wang Ying? Dissatisfied with the original's taunts, she had awakened her own spiritual intelligence and wanted to replace the original's. It could only be said that Miss Lotus Sun was indeed Miss Lotus Sun. Even the accident was so similar to brotherlings, as expected of a pair of buffoons. A perfect match. At that moment, the corners of Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's mouth twitched, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chapter 1327. When Yin and Yang were in chaos. So this was what he was referring to. In a daze, the monk completely understood what that fortune teller had meant back then. They had always mistakenly interpreted Yin and Yang as male and female, and thought that the sons of the void were a man and a woman. But they had never expected the sons of the void to be twins. The reversal of Yin and Yang referred to the awakening of the shadow, which had its own thoughts. By the time they had understood, it was already too late. The problem now was that, when Yin and Yang were in chaos, had already been verified. So what on earth did the latter part of the sentence, "Dye the blue sky with my membrane blood," mean? For some reason, the monk felt that the latter part of the sentence had some hidden meaning. What did the great master think of? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked at that moment. No, nothing. The monk's old face turned red. This matter is very important. This poor monk has to discuss it with Ling Jinren. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. ? In the Wang family's small villa, Wang Ling quickly received the monk's feedback. A son of the void with a twin constitution. Even Wang Ling hadn't expected this. But this confirmed his initial guess even more. All along, there had been a pair of hands behind the scenes, adding fuel to the fire and guiding their actions. Lotus Sun's shadow. What should it be called? Sunning? That sounded like a boy's name. That was too uncute. Is Ling Jinren thinking of something? Seeing Wang Ling's thoughtful expression, the monk couldn't help feeling curious. The monk also had the ability to read minds, but this ability was only ineffective on Wang Ling. He could only read large swathes of mosaic. Name, Wang Ling said succinctly. Ling Jinren means that he's thinking about what a good name to give Miss Sun's shadow. Survival Heavenly Dao acted as on the side. The monk was stupefied. He couldn't help but admire Wang Ling in his heart. At a time like this, he actually still had the time to think about a name. As expected of you. At that moment, Survival Heavenly Dao still hadn't stopped drawing talismans. Furthermore, there was already no one to help him. Loopy Toad had absorbed the soul of the new female groundhog, and was in the process of digesting it. So it needed to go into seclusion for a while. Lord Ma had used his teleportation ability to send it back to the demon world. Loopy Toad was now on the holy pillar in the demon world, using second-generation demon saint's seclusion room to cultivate in seclusion. with holy envoy Shen Wuyue guarding it. Only Loopy Toad could enjoy this kind of treatment. It was all for Wang Ling's sake. If other demonic beasts of the demon race dared to ride on the demon saint's neck and do things, they would have long been beaten to death. At the thought of this, Survival Heavenly Dao felt that its position was getting smaller and smaller. By the time Loopy Toad came out of seclusion, it would probably be able to ride on the Heavenly Dao's face. Their Heavenly Dao was truly too difficult. Sunning. That doesn't sound like a girl's name. The monk smiled and said, "This penniless monk has a good idea." At that moment, Wang Ling looked up at the monk, who gave his answer. "Why don't we split the word shadow into 3 and Jing?" Sun Sanjing. This poor monk thinks this name isn't bad. When Wang Ling heard this, even Survival Heavenly Dao next to him was startled on the spot. God. Not bad. Wang Ling thought that he was already a failure at coming up with names. He didn't expect to meet someone who was more ambitious than him. Let's call her Sunning. After thinking for a long time, Wang Ling felt that until he couldn't come up with a better answer, Sunning sounded better. At least, it was more reliable than the name Sun Sanjing. In a daze, Wang Ling recalled the author's real name. After splitting it up, he called it Jean Sanshur. It was also very old-fashioned. The most important thing now is to find Miss Sun Ying's whereabouts, the monk said. The truth was that while Wang Ling was thinking of names, he had already been looking for Sun Ying. Only magic could defeat magic. Only magic could defeat magic. Naturally, only the shadow could find the shadow. Wang Ying was a natural tool, and there was no way Wang Ling wouldn't put her to use. At the same time, Wang Ling was also very curious about where on earth Sun Ying had gone. Back then, Wang Ling had already experienced Wang Ying's cruelty. Don't use your thoughts to judge our shadow's personality. Every shadow who awakens its own consciousness has a different personality. In the spiritual space, Wang Ying was crossing her arms in protest. Miss Sun Ying might be a gentle shadow. Hearing this, Wang Ling was silent. He wasn't in a hurry to refute it. In any case, as long as Wang Ying found the other party's location, he would know what kind of existence Sun Ying on Earth was. Be careful. Before separating Wang Ying from the spiritual space, Wang Ling took the initiative to warn her. He didn't think Sun Ying was Wang Ying's match. But since Sun Ying was another son of the void, it was very likely that she had already obtained all the power of the void. Shadows and hollow spirits were similar in that they both didn't have physical bodies. But sons of the void were different from ordinary hollow spirits. If Sun Ying was fully awakened, she would be much stronger than the hollow spirit who had broken into the spiritual space the last time. Wang Ying completely ignored Wang Ling's words. She turned into a black shadow and swiftly scurried into the outside world. Let's go. At that moment, Wang Ling felt that he couldn't stay idle. Are we going to the unspeakable land? The monk was startled. They had originally planned to do it tomorrow. But since they had decided to move ahead of schedule, Monk Golden Lamp naturally had no objections. Since Jinren thinks it's feasible, then this humble monk will lead the way. After saying that, the monk took out a map of the Milky Way and spread it out on the ground. There were clear coordinates for the unspeakable land on it. Ling Jinren, this is the unspeakable land. It's in the depths of the Milky Way, and there are a lot of space traps nearby. Based on this humble monk's experience of entering it many times, there are some safety details that I will need to discuss with Ling Jinren first. After saying that, the monk pointed to a dozen or so red crosses on the map. These red crosses are places that need to be bypassed. Even if you use the power of shrinking the earth to an inch, it will be very troublesome to get out if you accidentally step inside. Given this humble monk's and Ling Jinren's strength, it won't be impossible for us to get away. But in the end, it will still be a waste of time. The monk chattered on endlessly about what he thought were the safety details. At that moment, he finally showed his true nature as an old monk reciting scriptures. Jinren, please take a look, and here and here. Those places are all space storms. Once you're sucked in, your clothes will be directly gone. Previously, this humble monk fell in several times and lost a lot of kasayas. Alright, that's all for this humble monk's safety details. This humble monk will lead the way from Earth to the unspeakable land. It will take 3 days. Was there a need to go through so much trouble? Wang Ling sighed in his heart. Standing in front of his wardrobe, he silently recited the incantation. After opening the wardrobe again, the wardrobe was overflowing with starlight. It was an impressive sea of stars. And the unspeakable land, which was similar to a floating cosmic island, was right in front of Wang Ling. It would actually take 3 days to reach the unspeakable land? 3 seconds. That was enough. Chapter 1328. Wang Ling's wardrobe could hold a sea of stars. It was a gremlin that had been specially enlightened for space, and could lock onto any corner of the universe. But after the wardrobe was opened, only people with an IQ of over 300 could see the space inside. Hence, Wang Ling's wardrobe was also known as the Emperor's New Wardrobe. It wasn't difficult for Wang Ling to reach the unspeakable land. What Wang Ling hadn't expected was, he would actually come out of the wardrobe with a monk. At that moment, Monk Golden Lamp's heart was filled with despair. Actually, he had expected that if Wang Ling had led the way, Monk Golden Lamp might have reached the unspeakable land much earlier than him. Maybe it would only have taken 3 hours? But the monk had never expected Wang Ling to actually find the unspeakable land in 3 seconds, with just one set of coordinates. The huge disparity in strength hurt the monk even more. He felt that he would have to cultivate for at least 300 million lifetimes to reach this level, as expected of Ling Jinren, the fastest man in the universe. Let's go and take a look. Wang Ling spoke telepathically to the monk. Then he stepped into the wardrobe and arrived in space. Tyrant followed closely behind. When he took a step forward, Tyrant's eyes lit up. With a bang, the door of the wardrobe was quickly closed. The monk felt as if he had seen this scene in a detective cartoon before. At that moment, Wang Ling's eyes were fixed on the cosmic floating island in front of him, which was wrapped in a layer of light. Even Wang Ling was stunned by this miraculous place which had been created by great magic power. Was that the unspeakable land which Tao ancestor Wang had established? Everything was as the monk had said at the beginning. From a distance, the unspeakable land looked like a golden egg glowing with magic power. The outermost protective light film was relatively easy to break through, and shone on the outside like an eggshell. And the egg yolk was the true form of the unspeakable land. It was a gorgeous floating island which shone with golden light. Looking out in a straight line, he also felt that the unspeakable land was very close to him. But even at this close distance, the monk had tried countless times without being able to smoothly reach its interior. For many years, this had been a great regret in the monk's heart, and a knot which he had been unable to untie. It's not difficult to break through the outer light film. The key is the egg-white layer in the middle. That is the chaos circle, the monk said. The monk had already told him this in the temple before. Wang Ling knew it by heart. Naturally, he understood the stakes. He floated in the air, and followed the monk. Then he raised his sword finger, and cut a hole on the outermost layer of the light membrane. It was a simple stroke, but it was full of power. The corner of the monk's mouth twitched again. He never thought that Wang Ling would actually be able to enter without using any fancy spells at all, although he could break through the light barrier himself. However, when he first entered, he had to continuously hit the light membrane hundreds of times before he could barely make an opening. What's wrong? Wang Ling felt that the monk's expression wasn't right. It's nothing. I just wanted to say that you're awesome, Taoist master. The monk closed his eyes and made a Buddhist salute. Fortunately, he didn't cultivate his state of mind for nothing. Otherwise, in the face of such a huge disparity, he would have long shut himself in. He successfully entered the second layer of the chaos circle. Wang Ling immediately realized that his body was being battered by the power of primal chaos. Normal cultivators would feel a lot of pain. But Wang Ling was different. He felt like he had stepped into a jacuzzi. It was pretty comfortable. The monk stared at Wang Ling's expression, and felt that something wasn't right. He had the urge to flip the table several times in his heart. What the hell was with this glowing face? The monk wouldn't be able to stay in the second layer of the chaos circle for too long. Although he didn't feel any particular discomfort, he wouldn't feel as comfortable as Wang Ling in here. Wang Ling saw the monk's deflated expression. Thinking that the monk couldn't take it anymore, Wang Ling stretched out his hand and hit the monk with a golden light. This was Wang Ling's supreme protective golden light. It could be considered a special exclusive magic artifact. It was just that Wang Ling's body was really too strong, and this golden light usually didn't have much use. Now it just so happened that it could be used by the monk. With this supreme protective golden light, the monk's ability to resist the power of primal chaos instantly increased. He finally felt the feeling of being soaked in a jacuzzi. It feels so good. Why does it feel so good? The monk couldn't help letting out a sound. It was hard to imagine that an eminent monk could actually show such an expression. Feeling that he couldn't bear to watch, Wang Ling hurriedly took another step forward in an attempt to reach the core area. With one step, he turned himself into an existence of light, and in the blink of an eye, he was able to traverse a long distance. This wasn't shrink to an inch, but a more powerful long-distance movement technique. Wang Ling called it inch of time. With each step Wang Ling took, the monk had to use shrink to an inch 100 times in a row to catch up. This was a little strenuous for the monk. At the same time, he was once again shocked by Wang Ling's power that didn't belong to a human cultivator. The unspeakable land was extremely close to Wang Ling. From what he could see, Wang Ling determined that he only needed to use inch of time twice to reach the heart of the place. But now he had already taken a whole 10 steps. The unspeakable land was clearly right in front of him, but the distance between them hadn't shortened. Interesting, Wang Ling said softly. In some sense, Dao ancestor Wang, this restriction maniac, had also given Wang Ling a difficult problem. Dao ancestor Wang's restriction reputation is well deserved. Back then, this poor monk fought and lost again and again. I wonder if coming here with Ling Junren today will fulfill this poor monk's long-cherished wish of entering the unspeakable land. At that moment, the monk sighed and stared at Wang Ling. Given Junren's strength, it shouldn't be hard for you to undo the restriction, right? The monk was testing the waters. If Wang Ling wanted to undo it, he naturally could. It was just that restrictions were very complicated. And Wang Ling had already made an analogy long ago. It was like a math problem. The best way to solve it was to work backward. But this would take a very, very long time. In fact, given the urgency of the moment, Wang Ling didn't have much time left. Too troublesome. Wang Ling shook his head slightly in response to the monk. Even Junren finds it troublesome. The monk's face was instantly disappointed. But before he could comment further, he heard Wang Ling say, "Just directly cover it." Cover it? The monk's eyes lit up, and he turned pale with shock. Junren, do you mean to directly cover Dao ancestor Wang's restriction? Wang Ling nodded. This was the most convenient method he could think of. The analysis process was too troublesome. It would be better to create a new restriction and replace the old one. Wang Ling stretched out his hand, and a huge reddish gold light was released from his palm. This light covered the entire unspeakable land. About 3 minutes later, Wang Ling put down his hand. It's done? The monk was blank. It's done. Wang Ling nodded. The modification to the restriction had been completed. What did you change it to? The monk was curious. Anyone who can withstand more than 10 of my palm strikes, inclusive, can enter, Wang Ling said telepathically. Chapter 1329. On the other side, in the Warsex seclusion cellar, room 331, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch used the guide spell to transfer the medical pod here. Currently lying in the true sovereign hall of the battle sect was another fake body of Lotus Sunday immortal Jin Yuan, and Miss Awan stood guard in the hall. Out of consideration for the safety of the real body, this was a temporary nesting camouflage technique. Although it might not be effective, it was at least a form of protection. How many bodies did Boss Luo build for junior sister Lotus Sun? Ajua was stunned. She was finally in close contact with Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. Looking at his face, which looked extremely similar to Wang Ling's, the girl hesitated to speak. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch is a very amiable person. Junior sister, if you want to ask anything, you don't have to be polite. Ajua smiled encouragingly from the side. She looked at the youth in front of her and asked politely, "Senior, have we met somewhere before?" Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch thought for a moment, then answered truthfully, "Nine Dragon Mountain. The body technique competition. Body technique competition. Lotus Sun thought carefully, and suddenly recalled a scene that was indeed very different from Wang Ling's usual style of doing things. Senior, did you substitute for student Wang Ling when you were writing the essay? Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was slightly surprised by the girl's extremely quick thinking ability. But since he had already been exposed, there was naturally no need to hide it. That's right, I was indeed substituting for little Master Ling when he was writing his essay. At that time, he was fighting with his own shadow in space. I knew it. How could classmate Wang Ling's essay suddenly get such a high mark? Lotus Sun smiled happily. It turns out that Senior is a speck of dust in this era. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch scratched his head, still a little embarrassed. Miss Sun, you must be joking. I was just performing normally. I didn't expect this to happen. This matter has caused a lot of trouble for Master. Suppressing the score is indeed a technical job. Lotus Sun nodded and couldn't agree anymore. I can't learn it either. It's easy to get 100 marks, but it's really too hard to get an average. How did you deduce that Master was swapped while he was writing his essay? Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch asked curiously at that moment. It's very simple. First, the characters are different. The girl replied very casually. Senior wrote the composition in student Wang Ling's place in the competition. Although the handwriting was very nice, it clearly wasn't student Wang Ling's handwriting. Classmate Wang Ling had a thin gold body. As for Senior's words, I have the fatty golden form. Right. It just feels a little thicker than usual. My handwriting is only slightly thicker than Master's. Then may I ask Miss Sun, is there anything else that's different? Of course. Lotus Sun nodded. Everyone is communicating with each other when writing essays. I felt that Senior seemed to be especially talkative that day. But I only said 3 sentences. Compared with classmate Wang Ling's usual silence, this is already an obvious anomaly. AI. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch sighed. He hadn't expected his best imitation of Wang Ling to still reveal a flaw. But I think it's pretty good. Senior doesn't have to deliberately imitate classmate Wang Ling. At that moment, Lotus Sun smiled. When I communicate with Senior now, it feels like I'm talking to one of classmate Wang Ling's personalities. As long as Miss Sun is happy. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch smiled. Lotus Sun found it very interesting that he was clearly different from Wang Ling himself. She had imagined countless times what the King Ling looked like when he smiled. Senior, can you smile again? At that moment, she took out her drawing tools. She wanted to find traces of Wang Ling's smile on Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. No problem. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was very cooperative and smiled naturally. His eyes were curved and his teeth were white. Elsewhere, Wang Ying dashed out of the Wang family's small villa. He didn't stop until he was deep in the western part of the Milky Way. He began to realize that something wasn't right. If Miss Sun Ying was heading for the unspeakable land, the coordinates for the unspeakable land were east of the Milky Way. It was in a completely different direction from this place. Have you finally noticed? But it's too late. A cold voice rang out in the air. Countless black shadows around them turned into hair-like substances that drifted in the air, and finally condensed into the figure of a girl. The Sun Ying in front of him looked exactly the same as Lotus Sun, but like Wang Ying, she also had white hair. Her long white hair was even longer than her body, like strands of ice hanging upside down. Complete void form. Wang Ying frowned slightly. He had a bad feeling about Sun Ying's aura. Sure enough, everything was as they had guessed at the beginning. Student Lotus Sun's main body was temporarily stuck in a state of void transformation, due to the separation of her body and soul. However, her shadow had completely turned into nothingness. Furthermore, Wang Ying could sense that the energy in Miss Sun Ying's body was astonishing, far beyond that of an ordinary hollow spirit. If they really fought, wouldn't she be a difficult opponent? Sun Ying? Wang Ying looked at the girl in front of him. Don't call me Sun Ying, I'm Sun Yinger. It's fine if you call me Ying. Sun Yinger said. I've been her shadow for too long, I've long wanted to get rid of her. Do you want to copy what I did when I took over her body? As a shadow, Wang Ying could more or less understand what Sun Yinger was thinking. Let me tell you, that's impossible. If you want to devour her, seizing her body is the key. But in Battle Sect, Miss Sun has too many people protecting her. And you'll be dragged here by me, or even defeated. I'm afraid it won't be that easy for you to defeat me. Sun Yinger smiled. You probably don't know about my shadow image ability, do you? Wang Ying frowned. My shadow image is the mother of division. I can split myself into many parts. Moreover, all of my split bodies have the same amount of energy as me. That's impossible. Theoretically speaking, it's indeed impossible. Because the split bodies won't have the same amount of energy as the main body. But don't forget, I'm a child of the void. There's an inexhaustible amount of energy in the void. Sun Yinger smiled. With the power of the void, my shadow image ability has become even more astonishing. You mean? At this point, Wang Ying finally realized what the problem was. That's right, what you've been chasing is just my split body. Sun Yinger looked at Wang Ying with an expression that said she had everything under control. And my main body is still hiding on Earth. At the same time, a white-haired girl exuding a dangerous aura appeared at the gate of Battle Sect. She opened her palm, and a pure white snow lotus mixed with the power of the void appeared in her palm, spinning slightly. Rong, return to the void with me. Sun Yinger's smile hit a dagger as she threw the snow lotus. In the void, the spinning snow lotus contained astonishing energy, and then it exploded, instantly illuminating the entire night sky. Chapter 1330. The petals of the void snow lotus bloomed in the air, and an endless amount of void energy instantly formed a huge devouring force, burning a huge hole in the entire space. Shattered buildings, mountain rocks, and rubble were all sucked into the hole created by the explosion. There were even many Battle Sect disciples who were extremely close to the core area, and could not escape in time. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! The disciples of the Battle Sect immediately noticed that something was wrong. The alarms that covered the entire sect immediately rang. A bunch of trash. Sun Yinger ignored the disciples who were rushing out of the Battle Sect. With a wave of her hand, she destroyed the forbidden array that the Battle Sect disciples had set up together. You want to trap me with a forbidden array of this level? Too naive. Sun Yinger was too lazy to care about these Battle Sect disciples who were jumping around. Buzz. She released an aura of the void, which was so strong that it could shake one's soul. The disciples of the Battle Sect that were floating in the void were like falling meteors. They fell heavily onto the ground and sank into the pit, unable to get up no matter how hard they tried. Under such intense pressure, every disciple's heart trembled. He felt as if he was a firefly competing with the sun and moon, extremely lowly. Isn't this Miss Lotus Sun? What's going on? A hen? The disciples of the Battle Sect were puzzled. The sudden attack had already left them dumbfounded. There's already one lying here. Why was there another one outside? As expected of Senior Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, it's exactly as he thought. She's here. At that moment, Immortal Jin Yuan sensed strong energy fluctuations outside the true venerated Great Hall. Humph! No matter who comes, I will protect Lady Sun's body. Lady Awan took out the feather sword of the God Realm and waited solemnly. It wasn't without reason that he was so concerned. She hoped to take advantage of this opportunity to get closer to Wang Ling. Earth had indeed upgraded. Divine Dao Star was still poor. If Divine Dao Star wanted to take a step forward, it would only be possible with Wang Ling's power. So in essence, this was also one of Lady Awan's little schemes as the Realm King of the God Realm. What are our chances of winning if we join forces? Immortal Jin Yuan asked. Let's not talk about whether she can win or not, but she definitely won't be able to gain an advantage. Miss Awan was full of confidence, although she was still a very weak Immortal World King. However, he couldn't just dismiss a legal lowly like her as a cadre. Once she fully matured, her battle prowess would be formidable. We have to lure her somewhere else. Our sect has only just been built, and her explosion just now directly destroyed a building worth 300 million immortal gold. Immortal Jin Yuan wiped at his sweat. At this moment, Sun Yinger's figure appeared in front of the hall. Then, right in front of Immortal Jin Yuan, Sun Yinger split into two. Split body. Immortal Jin Yuan and Miss Awan were shocked at the same time. More importantly, the energy contained in the split body was not inferior to the main body at all. It was almost exactly the same. I'm afraid that the other party has already noticed that the fleshly body in this true venerate hall has been replaced. Lady Awan frowned. Director Zhua, Death Heavenly Dao and Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch are underground. My main body's target is there. Looks like we have to get rid of these two clones as soon as possible. Let's head over to support them. In the spiritual space, Miss Awan and Immortal Jinyuan were talking. Sun Yinger was far more troublesome than they had imagined. You want to go and help? No way. The two Sun Yingers who had appeared in the true venerate hall had a clear goal. Each of them targeted an opponent and started a one-on-one contest. In order not to continue causing more damage to Battle Sect, Immortal Jinyuan and Miss Awan reacted in sync. Both of them took out their inner worlds at the same time. It was as if Sun Yinger was a doll in a trap. The purpose of the split bodies was just to delay the battle and prevent reinforcements from happening. For Sun Yinger, this was already a complete success. Before coming to Battle Sect, she had already figured out the ins and outs of everyone here. Not a single person could escape. The only troublesome characters in Battle Sect were probably Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, who was in the middle of retrieving a sword. That was right, Jinka and Bai Qiao were in Fatty Luo's shop for maintenance. The situation over there was probably similar to that of Immortal Jinyuan and the others. To be on the safe side, Sun Yinger had sent a total of 10 split bodies over. Even with Jinka and Bai Qiao, it would be enough to stall for a while. It actually wasn't hard to destroy her, but the key was that she could borrow the energy of the void to replicate and split herself without limit. And this was also one of Sun Yinger's biggest trump cards. Even if the entire Earth is destroyed, I'll take you with me, Rongrong. At that moment, Sun Yinger looked up at the sky. Before her ultimate trump card was completely revealed, she still needed to stall for a while more. The energy of the void was still 60% short of being complete. When that time came, she would make the final judgment on Earth in the name of the new master. Spirit of Earth? ? In the cellar where Battle Sect was in seclusion, the huge energy fluctuations on the ground were transmitted directly to the depths of the earth. All the seclusion rooms were shaking. That's amazing. The Son of the Void is so terrifying. Death Heavenly Dao frowned deeply. He never expected the Son of the Void to actually contain such astonishing energy. Senior, what are your chances of winning? Ajwa asked worriedly. He had fought Su Ling before, and knew very well how powerful they were. But the enormous energy hidden in Sun Yinger's body wasn't something Su Ling could match. This seems to be stronger than the Lord of the Void. Death Heavenly Dao was astonished. Why is that? The Void probably has an inheritance system. Once a Son of the Void is formed, the Lord of the Void's energy will start to transfer, and this inheritance ceremony should have started a long time ago. Death Heavenly Dao guessed. Otherwise, Miss Sun's shadow wouldn't have been able to reach its complete form so quickly. So that's to say, once the Lord of the Void finishes transferring all his energy, Junior Sister Sun's shadow will be the next Lord of the Void? That's absolutely it. What's more troublesome is that Miss Sun's shadow seems to have the ability to split. Combined with the endless void energy in the void, she can theoretically duplicate and split her original body without limit. Duplicate and split her original body without limit. Ajwa was startled. Wouldn't Wang Ying be very happy in the future? Boom. At that moment, another huge hole appeared in front of them. Sun Yinger's original body appeared here. They were 3,600 meters below the ground. There was a groundhog sealed in this water tower. And now there's a humanoid groundhog. Ajwa wiped at his sweat. Inside the golden lotus, the corners of Lotus Sun's mouth twitched as she felt a little offended. Rongrong, come back with me. That way, we can avoid a lot of deaths. At that moment, Sun Yinger stared at Lotus Sun inside the golden lotus with a smile on her face. Don't listen to her, Miss Lotus Sun. At that moment, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch stood up and stared at Sun Yinger. My battle strength isn't as good as Master's, but don't underestimate me. Really? Even if the earth is destroyed, it doesn't matter? Sun Yinger smiled. As long as Master is here, so be it. In any case, it can be repaired. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch said resolutely. Spirit of the Earth? Question mark. Chapter 1331. Something had happened at War Sect. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was in Fatty Luo's shop. However, he could also feel a powerful energy fluctuation coming from the direction of the battle sect. Brother Luo, can you hurry up? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. The maintenance process must not be interrupted. This was one of Boss Luo's nursing rules. Boss Luo naturally wouldn't be careless when it came to Jinka's maintenance. Listening to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's tone, it seemed that something really big had happened at Battle Sect. Fatty Luo could only speed up the work at hand. Senior Immortal, don't worry, it'll be done soon. Although that was what he said, he still felt a little reluctant in his heart. Jinka and Bai Qiao, mainly Jinka. It was rare for Wang Ling to take care of them. He hadn't had enough yet, and he was about to be taken away again. How could he cultivate? When Fatty Luo finished applying the last layer of lubricating oil, he quickly separated the sword blade and scabbard into Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's left and right hands. At the same time, Fatty Luo was also frowning deeply. Senior Immortal, don't you feel that energy fluctuation seems to be getting closer? Something was definitely not right. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned deeply. He held Jinka and Bai Qiao. As soon as he opened the door, he saw a row of white-haired Sun Yinger standing neatly at the door, smiling at him. There were at least 10 of them. You are Miss Sun's shadow. Combined with what had happened earlier, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal instantly understood what was going on. Monk Jindeng had long predicted that Sun Yinger might do something bad to Zhanzong, which was why he had asked him to take Jinka and Bai Qiao out of Boss Luo's shop ahead of time. He hadn't expected Monk Jindeng to be so serious. Furthermore, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal guessed right away that the 10 Sun Yinger in front of him were probably split bodies of Sun Yinger's Shadow Dao ability. Every single one of them had such a huge amount of energy. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had never expected this. As expected of a true monarch. Looks like you've already guessed everything. The 10 Sunning clones spoke in unison. The speed and intonation of their voices were exactly the same, as if there were 10 repeaters playing at the same time. What's your purpose? The main counterattack is to bring Rongrong back to the void. Do you think you can get away with it so easily? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal laughed. Jinka and Bai Qiao were here. Even if there were 100 Sun Yingers, he would not feel afraid. You can give it a try, true sovereign. At that moment, the 10 Sun Yingers stretched out their hands at the same time, and the black shadows in their hands sprang forth from all directions to completely engulf Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal in a pitch-black world. This was Shadow's inner world. Every doppelganger could use the power of this inner world. Now, with 10 Sun Yingers releasing their inner worlds at the same time, the inner world's surface area also instantly increased, becoming 10 times its original size. Her goal was only to prolong the battle. Even if Immortal Jinyuan and Miss Awan sucked her into the core world, Sun Yinger had nothing to fear. But the opponent she was facing now wasn't just Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. The Peachwood sword and scabbard in the man's hands were the biggest threat. So after careful consideration, the clone Sun Yinger immediately decided to make the first move and swallow Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal into her inner world, thus realizing the brilliant plan of trapping the dog behind closed doors. After being sucked into the pitch-black inner world, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help feeling shaken. The 10 clones of Sun Ying had an astonishing amount of energy. Now that they were stacked together, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal found it hard to breathe. As soon as he came to the inner world, he felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders, as if the weight of several mountains had fallen heavily on his shoulders. Lord Jinka, Lord Bai Qiao, don't sleep anymore. It's time to get up and go to work. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal roared. Then he abruptly sheathed Jinka. This was the greatest crisis Battle Sect had ever faced since its founding, and almost all the core members were fighting Sun Yinger's clone. Wang Ling was also aware of this. Shenren, do you want to go back and take a look? Monk asked. He was also worried about Battlesek's situation. Wang Ling shook his head. Now wasn't the time for him to make a move. As long as he was here naturally, he could ensure Lotus Sun's safety. Sun Ying'er was a good opponent. She was strong enough and could also split. In Wang Ling's view, this could be considered an experience for all the core members of Battlesect. Although Sun Ying'er was formidable, it wouldn't be easy to take her away just like that. Seeing that Wang Ling had his own considerations, Monk Golden Lamp naturally couldn't say anything more. Wang Ling had finally arrived at the legendary Unspeakable Land. This dazzling floating island in the universe was filled with an aura constructed from supreme nomological laws, which stirred one's mind, as expected of a place created by a Tao ancestor. The monk could already sense the powerful aura of heavenly Tao seeping out from inside. Although these heavenly Tao were defective, they were the original versions of ancient heavenly Tao. He had finally come in. It was all thanks to Ling Zhenren. His wish for so many years had finally come true in this moment. The monk felt a knot in his heart that had been holding him back for a long time finally melt like 1,000 years of ice. A warm feeling welled up in the monk's heart. Wang Ling saw that Monk Golden Lamp's entire body was emitting the golden light of Buddha. This was a sign of epiphany. After entering the unspeakable land, the monk had actually directly gained epiphany because the knot in his heart had been resolved. Wang Ling was slightly astonished at the scene in front of him. I'm back, everything is back. At that moment, the monk was sitting cross-legged on the shore of the unspeakable land, his whole body shrouded in the light of Buddha. He exuded the kind of Buddhist power that could deliver all living beings from suffering and transcend the nirvana realm. Was this the most holy of Buddhism? Wang Ling felt that he had learned something new, as expected of a man who could withstand 10 of his palms. Furthermore, Wang Ling noticed that the monk's battle strength was gradually recovering, and was even stronger than before. Previously, the monk had lost the cultivation of 3,000 lifetimes and a swastika, and had only been able to see a trace of Wang Ling's outline. At that time, Wang Ling had wanted to return the lost cultivation to the monk, but the monk had tactfully refused. Now, after the epiphany, the light of Buddhism on the monk's body had actually caused this lost power to actually return. Through the king's eye, Wang Ling could clearly see the 3 Buddhist fires in the monk's heart at that moment. Buddha fire of the past, Buddha fire of the present, and Buddha fire of the future. So that was it. Wang Ling already understood what on earth had happened in the monk's body. The power of epiphany had stimulated the monk to give birth to the Buddha fire of the past, which allowed the lost power to be recovered. Even the 10 lifetimes of cultivation he had lost in the forsaken land of the gods had been recovered. The Buddha fire of the present had caused the monk to have a great epiphany, which had consolidated his realm and stopped the loss of his cultivation. Simply put, if the monk used the swastika to spy on Wang Ling now, he would definitely be blinded. He would definitely be blinded, but it would no longer affect his cultivation. Finally, the Buddha fire of the future had allowed the monk's cultivation to advance even further, and he had comprehended a new Buddhist palm technique. It's all thanks to Ling Zhenren. You gave this poor monk a chance to have an epiphany. A few minutes later, the enlightened monk finally stood up and thanked Wang Ling sincerely. If you have the time, please hit me a few more times. I want to test whether my cultivation really won't be affected. Wang Ling. Wang Ling. Wang Ling felt that the monk should give himself a light bulb. Chapter 1332. At that moment, Wang Ling stood on the golden shoreline of the unspeakable land. He sensed Tao ancestor Wang using the supreme nomological laws to construct this floating cosmic island buried deep in the eastern part of the Milky Way. It could only be said that Tao ancestor Wang was indeed Tao ancestor Wang. Wang Ling had never seen a nomological construction like this. It was tantamount to creating a huge core world outside. There were a lot of things constructed using nomological laws. For example, an intrinsic spirit field for a true immortal was constructed from nomological laws. Most true immortals could do it if they wanted to. That was because an intrinsic spirit field wasn't particularly large. If the nomological laws were a little more complicated, that was the core world. In the traditional sense, It was an upgraded version of the intrinsic spirit field. Whether it was in terms of nomological composition or scale, it was far superior to an intrinsic spirit field. At the true immortal realm, only a very small number of people were able to create a core world. As for moving the core world out of the body, that was even more unimaginable. The unspeakable land that Tao ancestor Wang had created was at the very least on the scale of 100 million true immortal core worlds. Not only could he construct such a huge core world outside, he could also maintain the stability of the world here for a long time without it collapsing. This was indeed an unimaginably powerful technique. He felt that he had learned a lot from this observation. The world was so big. For Wang Ling, going out to see more was also growth. And now, the unspeakable land was already nothing for him to see, because he had already finished reading it. Wang Ling slowly raised his hand. The monk thought this action was a little familiar. Zhenren, what are you doing? Empty it. Wang Ling's answer was concise. Zhenren, you're not going to go in and take a look? The monk was startled. I'm done reading it. The monk was speechless. He sighed in his heart. This was probably the difference between a top student and a bad student. A top student only needed one glance to know the answer to the same question. As a bad student, he had to do in-depth research and analyze the question type before he could solve it. It could only be said that as expected of Ling Zhenren. At that moment, the monk once again felt the deep gap between him and Wang Ling. Ling Zhenren is awesome, broken voice. Was no longer enough to describe this gap. It should be, Ling Zhenren, forever God. Seeing the monk's thirst for knowledge written all over his face, Wang Ling finally put down his hand. Although destroying the unspeakable land was their ultimate goal in coming here. But since victory was already in his grasp, it didn't matter if it was destroyed a little later. Since the monk wanted to take a look, Wang Ling naturally had to accommodate his wishes. After all, he still needed the monk in the future. Furthermore, although Sun Yinger was coming at them aggressively, Wang Ling felt that the core members of Battle Sect weren't at a disadvantage. If he destroyed the unspeakable land and returned to join the battle, it would be too boring. For Wang Ling, that was a battle that could be settled in a matter of seconds. Thank you for fulfilling my wish, Ling Zhenren. Jin Deng was extremely grateful. Wang Ling replied indifferently, not paying much attention to it. Since the monk wanted to see it, he would definitely satisfy the monk's wish. At the same time, he split 50% of his attention to peek at the ongoing battle on Earth. Over there, the fight had already begun. At the same time, in the depths of the unspeakable land, an evil metal man with 3 heads and 6 arms woke up. In its shrunken state, it was still 10 meters tall. This gigantic evil golden man was none other than the master of the unspeakable land. Nickname: Primordial Heavenly Tao. Of course, it wasn't Tao ancestor Wang who had given it this nickname, but the evil golden man himself. I sense a very powerful aura. The evil golden man opened its eyes, and the 3 marks engraved in ancient characters between its eyebrows glowed faintly at that moment. Translated in modern terms, it actually meant 0 and 1. That was right, this gigantic evil golden man. It was the earliest heavenly Tao to be born in the unspeakable land. It was also the first heavenly Tao that Tao ancestor Wang had developed after creating the heavenly Tao. Although in the end, 001 wasn't activated. It was forever sealed in the unspeakable land by Tao ancestor Wang. But for the entire history of heavenly Tao, there was no doubt that 001 held a pivotal position. After Tao ancestor Wang had sealed all the defective heavenly Tao products he had developed in the unspeakable land. Just like that, 001 changed its name to Primordial Heavenly Tao. It became the boss of the unspeakable land. It became the master of this place. Lord Island Master, someone has landed on the island. It's a monk and a young man. The little evil golden man on the side came forward and inquired. There were also numbers engraved in ancient characters on their foreheads, but these numbers were very large. Some were 3-digit, some were 4-digit. There were even 6-digit and 7-digit numbers. Rumor had it that the current heavenly Tao, back then, Tao ancestor Wang had carefully selected 30,000 of them from tens of millions of test subjects. Tao ancestor Wang had evenly distributed the 30,000 heavenly Tao across the 10 universes. Then he had separated the 3,000 heavenly Tao and set up a combined restriction, so that the 3,000 heavenly Tao of the 10 universes would check and balance each other. The primordial heavenly Tao turned its gaze to the edge of the island. It saw the monk and Wang Ling. I recognized this monk. The primordial heavenly Tao had actually heard of the origin of the golden lamp. He smiled coldly. I remember that this monk had always wanted to enter this place a long time ago. In the end, he was unable to break through Tao ancestors' restriction. Who would have thought that in this cycle of time, this monk would actually succeed one day? The main reason why the primordial heavenly Tao had been roused was mostly because of monk golden lamp. That's right. He had only sensed the monk's aura before he had been roused. As for Wang Ling, who is this teenager? His disciple? The primordial heavenly Tao had never seen Wang Ling before. Island Master, what should we do now? This monk isn't easy to deal with. No matter how many people you send, I'm afraid it'll be useless. The primordial heavenly Tao yawned. I think I should do it myself. The unspeakable isn't a place that anyone can come and go as they please. It was just a monk and his disciple. The primordial heavenly Tao didn't care about these two people who had broken into the unspeakable at all. He had been dominating this place for too long. As the longest living heavenly Tao golden man of all the heavenly Tao, the primordial heavenly Tao was very confident in his own strength. At the same time, he had been sealed in the unspeakable for too long. Actually, his understanding of the outside world was very limited. Although some of the evil golden men who had been released from the crack had come back to report on the situation, it would take a very long time for them to go back and forth. Previously, some of the evil golden men on Earth had also wanted to report on Wang Ling to the unspeakable. Unfortunately, Wang Ling had destroyed those evil metal men with one click. They didn't know Wang Ling. It was probably this primordial heavenly Tao. Chapter 1333. Deep in the west of the Milky Way, star stones surged and space cracked. A fierce battle between two shadows was taking place here. Wang Ying's palm contained boundless power as he ruthlessly slammed the split Sun Yinger into the nearest planet. The moment she was sent flying, the girl's figure turned into a meteor and abruptly pierced through the core of the planet. Boom! The planet exploded, and the girl's figure disappeared into space. How troublesome! Wang Ying withdrew his palm. This was already the 8th time he had killed a split body. However, Sun Yinger's ability to replicate and split was beyond Wang Ying's imagination. After killing one Sun Yinger, another split body would immediately appear to continue fighting him. Give up, Wang Ying. The girl's laughter echoed in the air. Wang Ying saw a black curse mark streak across the girl's tall nose and spread down her face to her entire body. This was Sun Yinger's split seal. Every time the girl died, it would automatically activate and split into a new Sun Yinger. I know, Wang Ling is very powerful. But right now he's in the unspeakable land. Sun Yinger said with a confident expression. It's easy to get in there, but hard to get out. Wang Ying was silent. He was sure that Sun Yinger definitely didn't know that Wang Ling had already modified the restriction on the unspeakable land. If it had been Tao ancestor Wang's restriction, of course it wouldn't have been easy for Wang Ling to get out. But now, Wang Ling himself had already covered this restriction. In other words, the unspeakable land had already changed owners. It was impossible for a normal person to directly cover Tao ancestor Wang's restriction, to do such a heaven-defying operation. Thus, after Wang Ying heard this, he even thought it was a little ridiculous. Sun Yinger was too confident. She had been tricked and didn't know it. This was the greatest tragedy. At that moment, the split-body Sun Yinger was still in front of him, spouting nonsense. Now, your master is trapped in the unspeakable land, and my split body is delaying everyone. Just wait for my final blow, and the earth will instantly disintegrate. Battle Sect has already suffered a crushing defeat. I don't know what's the point of continuing to fight. Sure enough, the personality of the shadow and the original is very different. Wang Ying sneered. Sun Yinger's inexplicable confidence made him laugh. Unlike the main body, Lotus Sun's confidence was genuine, and definitely not the conceited kind. In comparison, Sun Yinger seemed a little excessive. Overconfidence was ignorant pride. To conquer this object of pride, for Wang Ying, there was actually a great sense of accomplishment. Woman, you are playing with fire. At this moment, Wang Ying looked at Sun Yinger and took a deep breath. You might not know this, but my ability is actually also replication. The split Sun Yinger laughed. You can also split like me? Even if you could, you're not a member of the void, so where would you get so much energy to use? Wang Ying stopped talking nonsense. Wang. In the next moment, a scene that caused the split body Sun Ying to turn pale with shock occurred. Right in front of his eyes, Wang Ying had actually split himself into dozens. Moreover, the energy of each split body was no different from Wang Ying himself. Don't forget my ability. I can replicate everything except my Lord's King's eye. Wang Ying stared at Sun Yinger and smiled. It had taken some time to replicate Sun Yinger's split ability, but fortunately, everything was under control. As for the energy needed for the split bodies, forget about him. The man who was currently in the unspeakable land. The energy contained in his body was more than the energy of 10, 100, 1,000 or 10,000 void worlds put together. Only Wang Ying clearly knew. His lord. A man who would never be squeezed dry. 5 minutes earlier, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was also in a predicament in Battle Sect. He was facing Sun Yinger's original body, which was even more difficult to deal with than the split body. Ajwa had already lent him advance. But the battle strength of the real clone was limited, and just withstanding the pressure from the original body was already very taxing for Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. Ajwa and Death Heavenly Dao carefully protected the girl in the Golden Lotus. With the help of the 33-path primordial chi, Ajwa opened all the remaining gates from the fight against the hollow spirits last time, and worked with Death Heavenly Dao to set up a defensive array. They firmly protected her in the golden light shield. Lotus Sun was moved. In front of her, there was what she could see and what she couldn't. Everyone was protecting her. But in her soul state, she could only watch helplessly and couldn't do anything. She couldn't stop the crazy Sun Yinger from launching a fierce attack on Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. Junior sister Lotus Sun, don't think too much. Don't worry, there won't be a problem. This battle wasn't going to be easy. But Ajwa tried his best to speak in a relaxed tone. The worst thing to do at a time like this was to be shaken. Shadow was the kind of person who liked to mess around. Once the girl lost her composure, Sun Yinger would definitely take advantage of it. Ajwa's words seemed to wake the girl up, and her pupils trembled. Senior Joie, hold on. Realization dawned on her. Everyone in front of her was fighting for her. Then she shouldn't give up so easily. She also shouldn't have the thought of returning to the void with Sun Yinger. The pure white petals of the snow lotus quickly fell from the air. Under the high-speed movement, these gentle petals became deadly sharp objects. They cut through the air as they passed through the void. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch held advance in his hand to block. He stabbed it into the ground. Bam. A dense forest of crystal bamboo, hundreds of meters tall, was instantly uprooted from the ground. These crystal bamboos were extremely hard and formed a thick defensive barrier. But the power of the snow lotus petals was unparalleled, and they rushed forward in droves. Countless bamboos were instantly cut down into bamboo joints, which finally turned into particles of light and disappeared. These particles of light landed on the ground, and in the end, new crystal bamboos grew out. The sun of the void is too strong. Ajwa marveled in his heart. A complete sun of the void was too powerful, and this didn't seem to be Sun Yinger's full strength. She was currently absorbing the energy transmitted by the Lord of the Void. As time went on, her overall battle strength would soar. Second sword in the world is too weak. Death Heavenly Dao ridiculed on the side. Senior, don't be so poisonous. It's not because he's weak, but because he was stimulated last time, and hasn't come back to his senses yet. Stimulated? It's all because of Lord Jingbai. After spending so much time in advance, he finally chose Fan Rue as his master, but in the end, Fan Rue directly took him to the only man he couldn't beat. That's not all. That man even found his scabbard. I understand. Understanding dawned on Death Heavenly Tao. It turned out that this single dog had been dealt a critical blow. No wonder he wasn't performing well, and was dispirited. Logically speaking, if Advance had been a little more serious, even if Crispy Noodle's Tao Monarch's battle strength wasn't good, he wouldn't have been suppressed by Advance. Rip. At that moment, pure white petals pierced through the dense bamboo forest and accurately hit Crispy Noodle's Tao Monarch's right eye. Blood instantly flowed down. Crispy Noodle's Tao Monarch pressed down on his eye and used Advance to support his body. Rong, I said that I would definitely take you away. Sun Yinger had a relaxed smile on her face. She looked up at the sky and muttered under her breath. Void energy. 97%, 98%, 100%. Everything was already over. At that moment, Sun Yinger rose into the air. She knew very well that the moment for her to play her final trump card had arrived in a split second. A tremendous sense of oppression that covered the entire earth descended. It was the tremendous pressure of a sovereign descending upon the world. Even a true immortal cultivator couldn't withstand the pressure, and fell to his knees, his whole body trembling uncontrollably. Sun Yinger had successfully become, brand new, the Lord of the Void. Chapter 1334. The Full Power of the Void Master. The immense pressure that was as vast as the sea of stars caused the entire earth to fall into a state of suffocation. Crispy Noodle's Tao Monarch was injured, and his body could no longer withstand such tremendous pressure. The entire situation seemed to have turned into a rout. Bang! The golden light shield created by Audiobook and Death Heavenly Tao shattered like glass. The two of them coughed up blood and knelt on the ground. Sun Yinger hovered in the air. With a gentle lift of her hand, she swept up the heavenly Tao of death from the ground. The power of the void broke through the door of the inner world, and forcibly pulled the Buddha Golden Lotus out of the Death Heavenly Tao's abdomen. The immense pain of forcibly breaking into the core world, and seizing what was inside made Death Heavenly Tao cry out in agony. His face was pale, and he felt as if his body was about to be torn apart by Sun Yinger. Sun Yinger's target was only the Buddha Golden Lotus. With a wave of her hand, she casually tossed the Death Heavenly Tao into the distance. Death Heavenly Tao's body passed through several large mountains. Boom. For a time, the mud flow collapsed, emitting an earth-shattering tremor. Rong, we can finally be together. Sun Yinger held the Golden Lotus in her hands, and looked at the girl inside. At the same time, a curious look appeared on his face. Ha! You don't seem to be afraid at all? Could it be that you've already prepared to fuse with me? You won't succeed. Lotus Sun pursed her lips. They actually trapped you in the Golden Lotus. That's too much. Rong, just wait, I'll free you now. As soon as she finished speaking, Sun Yinger suddenly exerted force and completely crushed the Golden Lotus with her bare hands. The young girl's soul immediately turned into a stream of light and returned to her body. This was the first step to returning to the void. Only after returning to his physical body could the inheritance ceremony officially begin. Therefore, even if Wang Ying found a way to stop the split, it was already too late. I'm already very angry. I hope you're prepared to pay the price. Crispy Noodle's Tao Monarch used the last of his strength to stand in front of the girl. Lotus Sun saw it. At that moment, Crispy Noodle's Tao Monarch was trembling all over. The blood gushing out from his injured right arm had already soaked his clothes. Senior Crispy Noodle's Tao Monarch. Don't come over. Miss Sun. You're standing right behind me. No one can get close to you. Crispy Noodle's Tao Monarch was at the very front, firmly protecting the girl behind him. I didn't expect you to be able to dance. Sun Yinger's expression was still relaxed and proud. It's just a trick. This is already the last attack. The void energy in the universe had finished gathering. Next, all she had to do was summon the gate of the void and aim it at Earth. A single shot of the ultimate void apocalypse cannon could easily destroy the entire Earth. But now, she saw a doppelganger trying to salvage this predestined situation. This made Sun Yinger laugh from the bottom of her heart. You're just a real clone. Even if you have a portion of that man's power, you're still no match for me. As for that man, he's already trapped in the unspeakable land, and won't be able to return anytime soon. As she spoke, Sun Yinger was also enjoying the look on Crispy Noodle's Dao monarch's face as he withstood the immense pressure she was putting on him. She knew this man couldn't hold on any longer. The immense pressure from the Lord of the Void was exerted on all the cultivators on Earth at the same time. Only Lotus Sun was unaffected. After her soul returned to her body was already transforming into that of a son of the void, and she was naturally immune to this pressure. Stop holding on, Neil. Sun Yinger's trademark expression, which hid a dagger behind her smile, was especially horrifying after becoming the Lord of the Void. She stretched out her finger and pressed it down. She wanted to see Crispy Noodle's Dao monarch kneel in submission in front of her. But in the next moment, something happened that Sun Yinger didn't expect. The man's knees were already bent to the extreme, and he was about to fall to his knees. In that moment, it was as if he was ignoring the pressure as he straightened his back and stood up again. Sun Yinger frowned and felt that something wasn't right. She couldn't figure it out. How could a clone who was already seriously injured stand up again? Is Earth going to blow up again? In Sun Yinger's dark inner world, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt a strong fluctuation of energy coming from the outside world. He didn't need to know. Something big had happened on Earth. But what was worse was that he couldn't get out of this inner world at all. Sun Yinger's 10 clones were too difficult to deal with. He had already awakened Jinka and Bai Qiao. Given Jingbai's strength, he could naturally kill a child with one slash of his sword. But Sun Yinger's unlimited splits gave Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Jingbai a headache. Why did it feel like they were playing Unlimited Fruit Ninja? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Jingbai roared in their hearts. Give up. Earth is about to be destroyed and everything will turn to ash. The 10 Sun Yinger clones said in unison. They were exulting in the triumph of their purpose. Don't celebrate too early. At that moment, a familiar voice rang out in the inner world. Behind the 10 Sun Yinger clones, 10 Wang Ying clones suddenly appeared. They grabbed Sun Yinger's head in each hand. You? Sun Yinger clones were shocked. She didn't understand how Wang Ying had been able to appear in her inner world. What shocked Sun Ying even more was that Wang Ying had also learned how to split. Goodbye. The 10 Wang Ying clones moved in unison. There was almost no time for Sun Yinger to react. Bang 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 bang. Without the slightest bit of mercy, he crushed the heads of the 10 Sun Yinger clones like they were watermelons. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal swallowed in astonishment. He felt that this might be the legendary scene of domestic violence. To Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's surprise, the 10 Sun Yinger clones didn't finish splitting. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal himself swiftly followed the 10 Wang Ying clones out of the dark inner world and returned to reality. How did Lord Wang Ying do it? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was very curious. Of course I have to use some special methods to deal with a woman who plays with fire. Wang Ying's lips curled up slightly. I copied her Shadow Dao ability, so I naturally learned to split. As for the ability to stop splitting, it was that girl Anwan who gave it to me. Did Spiritual Master Anwan make a move again? She's just a meddlesome girl. She just can't sit still in her stomach every day. Wang Ying clones laughed. I've already sent people to the other battlefields, and they can effectively stop Sun Yinger from splitting. Except for one place. What place? A place where you can win without appearing. That you're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.